Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 637th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. And look, I've got a lot of confessions to make. I got to make them quick. All right, I'm human. As you know, I took a few months off. Had Dr. Dre, Dre Baldwin, Dre all day. Yeah, it shows I'm old talking about Dr. Dre and basketball. But had a great episode with him, so getting things back on track for the new year. It's been a few weeks. Thought I would get this out earlier, but have Glenn Twiddle on. He is from down under, and you will enjoy this. I got the sound right at least, but I'm still having connectivity issues. If whoever's like super smart, let me know. I've had Frontier out, swapped out the ONT unit in my garage, fiber to the home. They swapped out, some device down in the corner, whatever they'd call that. Sent me a new router. I haven't plugged that in, but I don't know. Maybe my computer. So my next one, if I remember, I'm going to do it on my laptop. We shall see. But I tried to edit it out, but it was, I told Glenn ahead of time, hey, if you see me freeze, just keep talking. So, but this is a long episode. You may want to double speed this one. We've known each other for about 8 years. I had him on before. I know him and his wife. Good people. He is a successful entrepreneur. He puts on big events, like bringing Arnold Schwarzenegger out. And we talk about that and why you should try to get celebrities out. I asked him towards the end, and he clarified my thinking on that and changed my mind a little bit on having celebrities out to events. 'Cause I'm working on a couple of things for this year. And I've reached out to some folks to bring some celebrities into my events. So that was good. He, huge events, nearly $1 million to put on. And we talk about, I never knew his story. I've seen his pictures with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, and like, what the hell's going on? And so he shares that story. But I mean, I think this is my longest podcast ever. I had Ben Gay III on twice, back to back, and overall we went, I think, 2.5 hours. So he's the longest one that I've spoken to, but it was over 2 episodes. I just took this one, and I'm just putting it up. We rambled, but everything has a purpose, right? I did bring it back in, tie things in. So I think you'll enjoy it. I had fun catching up with him. And like I said, as we talk about things, and then I brought it around to selling and to entrepreneurship, and Glenn tied it in. Okay, so, have some fun with this. Take some notes. Like I said, I'm making this quick. I'm taking most of the family. There's 6 of us. 7. Flying out to Austin right now for heading to Bastrop, which is a suburb of Austin. My mom has lived there since 2004. And, we're from Louisiana originally, so she's helping put on their first Mardi Gras. So my sister's coming in from Dallas. Her family has had the throw-up bug, so it's just her, unfortunately. I got a cousin and her family coming in from Alexandria, another cousin, his family coming in from Mamou, Louisiana. So we got an Airbnb. I've got other friends coming up from Austin and San Antonio, and going to be a party. So keep this short and sweet. If you got any questions on this, hit me up. As always, you can hit up makeeverysale.com if you want the on-demand course, and then visit thesaleswhisperer.com for info on the inner circle. Come join every week. We're on live, and I hope you get through your sticky issues. All right. So now let's bring on Glenn.
There we
go. Glenn,
I think he's on.
Don't be talking when I'm talking. Why are you talking when man, I'd have to redo this all over, but I'm not going to do that. All right.
I shut my Aussie ass up.
Golly, the real estate renegade, all the way from the land down under. Glenn Twiddle's back in the house. How the heck are you?
Hey man, I know this will date the podcast, mate, but I want to know how the heck are you? Aren't we about to start World War III? And is my big brother the USA? Are you guys still our ally in the case that we are? Because boy, oh boy, aren't we in crazy times?
Look, all you got to worry about is if I'm your ally, and I'm your ally, so we're good. All right.
Good,
it's just,
man.
if the shit hits the fan, just make it to my house, and we're covered. All right. We can shoot our way into or out of anything we need to.
Yeah, gee, man. I tell you, it really does create. I was saying to you, for your listeners, we were talking offline, and again, this will date when Wes and I are talking. But I said, Wes, did you have on your 2024 bingo list that Ben Shapiro will be the #1 rap star in the world? Well, tick it off. Here's 2024. It's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, I literally just made a post just before we went live. It's like Ilhan Omar, the representative from Minnesota. She had the president of Somalia, I guess, come out to Minnesota, and she says, this is my president. This is our president. I called him uncle. He calls me my girl. And I'm like,
I couldn't believe that speech she made, where I thought, is that treason? Because I got a lot of friends in the US, so I really do follow what's happening over there. Because I've been to your amazing country maybe 30 times for personal and business reasons. And so I really do feel an affinity with a bunch of you guys, yourself, man, right at the top of the list. And I just can't believe what's kind of going on over there. But then I'm sure you guys can't believe what's happened over here over the last few years. The world's gone mad. It's not just you guys.
Well, it's I posted, it's like, I said, you just have to laugh. Otherwise you'll cry.
Yeah.
It's literally crazy. And, but we'll get into, I will make this fit sales. Okay. But
yeah. Well, I suppose that's the thing, is here we are with these unique set of skills we've got that between the pair of us, certainly we've got some complementary skill sets that we've developed in order to be able to sell things, to make sales, to do good commerce, let's just say, in various industries. And is that skill set still the thing that's going to help keep us where we need to be with our families and our loved ones and all of that? Because I often hear, Wes, because I know you're doing great, and I know, where I sit in the wealth category, and I know it's pretty good, it's sort of early 7 figures. So it isn't billionaire, but it's very nice, comfortable 7-figure business that I have. And, there's expenses and things. I want to know how successful you have to be before you fit into these categories that is called the elites. Like they always talk about the elites and how big business and stuff. How wealthy and successful do you have to be before you fit into that category? Because if Vivek Ramaswamy ain't in that category, and Vivek's a middle millionaire, nipping at the heels of billionaire, man, do you have to be a trillionaire? It sort of makes me wonder how the skill sets that you and I have developed. I suppose the good thing about you, Wes, is not only have you developed some intellectual skill sets that I love, your sales and influence, persuasion, and all of that ability. You're a jiu-jitsu, physical combat black belt. You've got your feet in two worlds.
Brown belt.
Brown. That's very cool.
2 years ago.
You're setting yourself up, mate, for success in any world, no matter what that world does around you. So it's pretty wise counsel that you've been giving me, mate, over the years. So very cool.
Yeah, it's I was going to say, it's like thinking about like this doesn't make sense, but in the big scheme of things, it does make sense. This is war, and people want to say, "Oh no, everything's okay." It's like, no, this is war. There is good, there is evil. There always has been. The fact that we, at least in the U.S., have lived in relative peace. This is an anomaly in the 10 or 20,000, 50,000 year history of mankind.
100%.
Go look. I follow on Instagram this a couple of channels on castles, and I just saw a thing. I think it said France has the most castles. I think 40,000 castles in France. But castles are everywhere. My son was studying abroad. I went and spent a week in India, and we toured some castles. And huge forts. 1,100 years old, because mankind has been fighting one another since Cain and Abel. And so when you look at the big scheme of things, it's like, why is a U.S. representative pledging her allegiance to another country. And that country, is Muslim. And it's like, say what you will. It's like the U.S. was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. And people support her and cheer her on. It's like, here's a disconcerting question I have not gotten an answer to, right? Being in the military, we take an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
And domestic, yeah, I've heard that.
Right? And so when the whole Trump thing and January 6th, whatever you want to call it, I was asking my friends, it's like, what does that mean, foreign and domestic? Who declares a domestic enemy?
And of who? Like, are the January 6th audience the enemy of the country, or is the country the enemy of that audience? You're right, mate. Who gives the definitions?
Who declares it, right? And whose orders do we follow, and where do we meet? Literally nobody can answer that question. So we've taken an oath that nobody knows how to fulfill. And hey, the history books are written by the victors.
Yeah. What was it, that Norm Macdonald quote? I'll butcher it because he's funny and I'm not. But Norm Macdonald said, isn't it good that it always seems to work out because the good guys have always won the wars or something? You know what I mean? And he's making you wonder. You got to think about that it's always the good guys who won. Always. And why is that? Because the good guys get to tell the story afterwards.
Well, and I tell you, I'm ashamed to admit it, but it was only like in the last 10 years and probably like the last 5 years before I realized that in Star Wars, the U.S. is the empire. The U.S. is not Luke Skywalker and the rebels.
Well, was it Jordan Peterson, again, your neighbor to the north from Canada? I think Jordan was, drawing all of our attention to the fact that in the case of some horrific situations we might find ourselves in, like say it was in the German,
Nazi Germany,
the Hitler era or whatever, everyone thinks they would do the right thing and hide the victims from the oppressors. Or in the South, if we happened to grow up in the South, that we would have thought slavery was wrong and we would have freed slaves because we are so morally virtuous that we would have been on the right side of history. But, the last 5 years have taught us nothing since COVID, that 9 out of 10 people who think they would have been on the good guys would have been on the oppressive follow along with what everyone is doing side. Clearly.
Yeah, and that's where I forget the saying. It's like it's better to be a warrior who gardens, right? Who knows how to garden, right? Or a gardener knows war rather than be a gardener in the middle of war and doesn't know war, right? Because he talked about that. It's good to be a dangerous man.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
It was so funny. I met some college buddies a couple of weeks ago, and my buddy said that to my other buddy. He says, you don't want to mess with Wes. He's like, his wife was telling us, he said that Pete always says, if there's one guy you don't want to mess with, it's Wes. I mean, it's like, okay, well, that's good. And for 12, 13 years, I've had my concealed carry permit. So if we meet, chances are I've got a gun. I've got a knife, and they were bagging on me because I had a pocket knife. They're like, what are you doing with that? I'm like, so I may need to open some cheese and crackers. I'm like, every man should be carrying a pocket knife. My daughters carry pocket knives in their purses. I'm like, you should always have a pocket knife. But and then training jiu-jitsu. It's like, but it has calmed me. Right? When I started carrying a gun every day, I had less road rage. Because I knew because they make you take a lot of courses, and every 2 years we have to renew and blah, blah, blah. But they talk about, even if it's a justified shooting, your life's going to become hell. Yeah. They're going to investigate everything. And if anybody shows, oh, you were cutting this guy off, like you were antagonizing him, you're this gun wielding, you're the Second Amendment crazy military veteran, you just want to fight and warrior, blah, blah, blah. You were hoping this would happen. You just wanted to blow somebody's head off. So it's like, so you have to be so calm, right? You have 100%. To back up and say, look, I literally had no choice. And that's why I love training jiu-jitsu. I mean, I had to take a guy down a few years ago at a party in our neighborhood. A drunk dude took him down twice. Let him go home. He hopped the fence and came back. You know, but I didn't have to punch him. I grabbed him, put him down, sat on him.
Yep.
It's
mate, it's funny you say that. I was reminded just this Christmas, and I'm 51. That's what I like, mate. No matter what happens, we're probably not of military recruitment conscription age nowadays. But I was reminded just this last Christmas that on a train, and this is relevant to now, it's really interesting, on a train, because I forgot about this. Because as a kid, when I was 18, I used to wrestle. And in Australia, wrestling isn't a big sport. So freestyle amateur wrestling, we did what we called shoot wrestling. Before UFC and MMA became a thing, it was before even UFC 1, when Hoist Gracie came along and started showing the world with Ken Shamrock and all those first UFCs. When that was first released, we were doing the sport, so there was pancrase, and we called it shoot wrestling, and then it became the main sort of sport of the fighting world, in the years to come. And so when I was 18 and I was a competent wrestler, but the world hadn't yet trained in things like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there was a person attacking on our train system, one of the conductors, right? A ticket man, just saying, tickets, please. And he was attacking this old guy. And it seems, because I was reminded of this, that I took the guy down, held him and immobilized him, because that's the beauty of wrestling. You can immobilize someone without striking them, without actually harming them. And he's sitting there freaking out. And I said, look, I'll let you go, man, but you got to leave that guy alone and just calm your farm or whatever. So let him go. He started attacking the ticket guy again. So I just held him there for like 10 stations, and the cops met him and all of that. And it seems that the railway car drivers, the train drivers, of which I was at a Christmas party and there was a train driver there, they still talk about this kid who saved that ticket taker, conductor guy, to this day. That's 30 years ago. So it's certainly being able to handle yourself physically is certainly a winning strategy. So I'm inspired, mate, that you've kept up your training until even now. So, mate, it's certainly an honor and an inspiration to watch you roll, my man. All right, now let's take a little pause where we go like that. Wes did tell me that if he goes away, I was going to take a pause, that if Wes goes away, that I should keep talking. So just in case this is continuing and Wes does need content, let me keep giving you some lessons. So my name is Glenn Twiddle. I met Wes at a training event where we were learning how to influence and persuade. That's effectively what it was. And so I've been a student of Wes. I've seen what he's done. When I first met him, he was an expert in setting up multimedia, multi-step follow-up and tracking and sales systems. And I've certainly... okay, Wes has left us alone, gang. Now, I don't know if that means this is still recording. In fact, I don't think it does, because that button there. Oh, no, maybe it is. All right, do I wait for him? Do I wait for him, gang? Do I talk to you guys? I promise, when he gets back, we'll get back to lessons. Here he is. He's back.
Oh, my gosh. I am so irritated. Oh, well.
I tried to follow your instructions and keep on talking.
So yeah, but it's funny. I was reading the transcript because that still works because unfortunately this is on 2 tracks. But
okay,
so they still talk about that's awesome. But it's
edit out accordingly.
Yeah, I'll have to do it. God, I'm so irritated. But hey, we keep going, right? And that kind of bringing it all around, right? When things don't go your way, you got to keep going. When things, my dad always says, when things don't make sense, there's something you don't know. So right, so like why would a U.S. representative bring in a foreign leader and defer to them, right? So, in sales, if things don't make sense, there's something you don't understand. If things aren't going your way, tough luck. You got to still keep grinding it out. And, and people, I see them, they give up too soon, right? I'll be 54 soon. I mean, a couple months. And I keep training, I'm 1.5 years, 2 years to my black belt, as long as, I don't get hurt. And I mean, I feel good. And
well, I saw a meme the other day, bro, and it was maybe it was in the last year or so, and there was a photo of Al Bundy, like of Ed O'Neill,
yes,
of Keanu Reeves in his John Wick thing, and of Aquaman. They all trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then it said, the quote was something like, I was today years old when I realized that Al Bundy could beat up Aquaman and John Wick, because he's like a multi-degree black belt or something, been training his whole life in Brazil.
Well, yeah. So I think Keanu is kind of new, but Al Bundy's been a black belt for years. So
yeah,
it's like
so Al Bundy could
John
whop
Wick.
Aquaman and John Wick, man. How crazy is that?
But there's a lot of people like Tom Hardy. He's legit. He's a blue belt.
Wow.
And he's competing in tournaments for real. And you know, people were picking on Zuckerberg because he's been taking private lessons, and people are like, well, it's not the same thing. And it's like, who cares?
Yeah.
You know, if you're getting private lessons from a world champion, you're probably getting pretty good.
Damn straight.
You know?
Yeah, that's one thing about Brazilian and wrestling, man. When I wrestled, I look, it's a big name drop, but as part of the, you know, the sales training, and I promise you guys, we will get, I'm sure, to some sales principles that'll help you make some money in a moment. But as part of what I did in my business, I hired Georges St-Pierre to come to one of my events and speak and all of that. And so as part of that, as part of the interview process, I flew to Canada to do some promotional interviews. But we're sitting in front of the cage. He's got his own private octagon behind us. So after we were done, I said, what are you doing, Sava? Because I'd flown, you know, for a half-hour interview. I flew from Australia, like 20 plus hours each way to get to Montreal to interview and spend half hour with Georges St-Pierre. But he respected that lunacy, because we could have done it on Zoom, but I said, hell no. If I'm allowed to go and sit with you for half an hour, I will travel for a week, days either side to get to you in order to spend half an hour with the greatest of all time. And so when we'd finished the interview, I said, what are you doing? You got a minute? And he said, whatever. And so we ended up spending half a day with him. And so we jumped in the cage and had a roll. And it was really, so I got to literally, you know, for a basketball fan, that's the equivalent of having a one-on-one game of basketball with Jordan, you know, or sparring with Ali, you know. And so, but the thing about wrestling is it does not prepare you, because in wrestling, when you're in a defensive position, you take a post and you give them your back. So as soon as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master got me, so that's where I'm vulnerable. I'll default to defending myself face down, and then GSP, like a snake, gets around and chokes the hell out of me, bro. So yeah, it's definitely you want to multi-skill up, because there'll always be a vulnerability if you keep your skill set consistent for 30 years. The world will move on without you, and the world moved on without me, because I'm vulnerable to giving up my back, you know. So there's a principle in there somewhere.
Yeah, and I didn't know that much about it. And you know, wrestlers, when they show up in jiu-jitsu, they just destroy everybody with takedowns. But then they don't have the submissions.
Yep.
But in jiu-jitsu, you can pull guard, right? So if I see you're this quick, mobile guy, I'm just going to grab a sleeve and sit down.
Yep. And that's the thing with guard. In wrestling, guard is your pinned. You got your shoulders on the mat. You know what I mean? So we are trained to not be face up like that, you know?
And that's what I mean.
You've got to undo that training.
You got to undo that training, right? Because wrestling's a great sport. And to an untrained opponent, if you are a grappler in general, you're going to wreck that person.
Yeah.
But when you come up against another skill set, right? And like in sales, I always tell people it's our job in sales. We have to adjust how we sell to match how the prospect buys, right? So if you show up as a wrestler to a UFC match or an IBJJF, right? Jiu-Jitsu tournament, and you don't familiarize yourself with the rule set, it doesn't matter if you're a world champion wrestler, you're going to lose. You know, because you gotta understand the rules set. You gotta know the game going in.
Yeah.
And too many salespeople. And look, that's how I started this, right? I was making good money in sales for like from 98 to 2006. I was making $100,000. And, you know, back then, 98 to 99, I made my first $100,000. That's like $175,000 a day. So that was my first full year in sales after leaving the Air Force. And so by 2006, I was making good money, but I was so tired and frustrated because like I just worked too hard. You and I found a course. I found a guy that I trusted and took a course. And man, it was like earth shattering, in like good and bad, right? It's kind of like I realized, like, holy shit, I've been doing this all wrong the whole time. It'd be,
Well, you met
like
your Georges St-Pierre. I thought I was going all right. Then I meet someone who's a master.
Yeah. And fortunately, like, I wasn't going against him, right? He was just my coach, but I realized, like, I could have made I could have made twice as much money with half the effort if I'd known this 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And and the good news was, okay, from now on I can start doing things right. So it was like a little bittersweet, it was like,
but again, as we move into the new world, and I'm glad we're doing this, because certainly, we can have this discussion really both as novices, because no one knows what it's going to be like moving forward. So, historically, I was known as a great copywriter, right? And I could sling together compelling words to make a marketing piece do what it's meant to do, whether that's a video, whether that's a text on a letter, an email, etc. With the advent of whatever's moving forward, I would suggest, Wes, that we're both in that period where we don't know what's happening moving forward, because with the advent of ChatGPT and the graphical and even video versions of what AI is able to accomplish in terms of, like, it can write copy. For anyone who prides themselves on being able to write good, industry-based, professional copy, because a lot of my clients are real estate agents, and so they want to learn how to write words that will get them either a home to sell or a buyer to want to buy through them and represent them. So they pride themselves on their professionalism. And what I say to those students now, here's the problem you're up against. ChatGPT can write professional copy better than you can by a country mile. So even in these early days of AI copywriting and AI integration into the marketing space, the ability to write conversational, human-sounding copy, like almost using, using bad grammar, using incorrect language constructs so that the world can feel through your words, either spoken or certainly written, the world can feel that you're a human. That's certainly something that's even happened now, because I've been split testing myself of my copywriting versus ChatGPT's copywriting on Facebook ads. And the beauty of Facebook is it gives you measurement devices where you can't argue with the results. You can't cry about it because it gives you a number. This copy got you leads at X per lead, and this copy to the same audience with the same whatever got you at the numbers can't be argued with. And thankfully, my conversational style of copywriting still beats ChatGPT. I wonder if there'll be a moment when ChatGPT can learn to speak Glenn Twiddle. I don't know. But this is the uncharted territory that we're moving forward into, when we can't trust our eyes because we don't know if that video or that audio is real or not, because AI can do all of these things even now, let alone as it evolves into a more and more complex and unable to be discerned from reality future, when we see a video of Joe Rogan saying something, or the president saying something, or a congresswoman saying something, how do we know that that is real if we weren't in the room with that person? And at the moment, it's close to being indiscernible that we don't know. It's a new world we're heading into in marketing. So I wonder what the new skill sets will be in that new world as we move forward.
Well, I like to always say what's old is new, right? And if you want to zig, zig when they zag, okay.
For sure.
Then I think maybe right in your wheelhouse, doing live events. You can't fake that.
Yeah.
Right? People are going to become so untrusting. It's like I switched my website. I'm using this platform called Beehive, and it's a newsletter tool firstly, and then they've got some blogging and now some web components. And the founder, I'm following him. We're connected, and because it's so new, these guys are some former Google guys, and so sharp dudes. This thing's it's exploding. But he had a post last week and said, "Hey, new release. If your newsletter is a little light, use our AI, to beef it up, fill in the gaps." And I asked him, I'm like, why do you want this as a newsletter person? You know, it's like back when VAs were a thing, right? I mean, they still are, but, you know, hire your overseas VAs. I remember, you know, 2010, 11, 2008, somewhere in there. I mean, that was blowing up. Hire an overseas VA and they can do all your work for you. Okay. And I've had overseas VAs for years. But the old joke was, I'll have my VA write an email or an offer, email it to your VA so they can, decline it. Like, where are we? And so now we just have computers creating more content, and it's good content, but still, as humans, we can only consume so much. So now what? We're going to have our Cliff Notes coming back, right? Did you have Cliff Notes back in the day?
We never did, but I understand the concept where we have a book summary in a page or two rather than read a book. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's so much stuff. Like, how can you get to it all? So somebody's got to be the conduit, the aggregator, the summarizer, because people are just overwhelmed, but like going back to like fighting and war and crazy stuff in politics and in business, you want to frustrate your opponent. You want to get them tired, right? Sun Tzu is thousands of years old. Appear strong where you're weak, appear weak where you're strong. So, when I'm passing a guy's guard, like today, I mean, I rolled and I was rolling with a smaller guy, and he's I think he's a blue belt. Very athletic.
Everyone's smaller than you, Wes.
we have a few guys that are bigger. But so I pass his guard, and he's framed, he's pushing. And I sit there and, I say, I let you cook. Right. I don't just pass right away. I don't want him to have energy. So I get his leg up, I hook the head, cross face the neck, kind of bend him over. Boom. Okay. I let the leg pass, I block the hip, and I feel, I don't collapse on him, right? I stay up a little bit. So he has to push and use his muscles, not bring the arms in and absorb with his frame. And people, new guys at least, always do this. And even as a blue belt, he's still new, right? I've done this 7 years. He's done it 18 months. And so I let him cook. And you feel them give up.
Yep.
Right. So now he has no wind, no energy, no strength. And now I can attack. I want to save my energy, right? So I want to do things that get my opponent tired. So that's war. Right. That's battle. That's martial arts. That's what we're doing. That's what we're up against. So our opponents, I've really, like, literally last week come to this realization, looking around, that I was following this guy, a funny account, but now he got big and he's in sales, and he's got a podcast I haven't followed, but I saw somebody share a snippet from their podcast, and they just throw out these crazy ideas. Okay. And like, whatever, right? I could say, eating a palm tree a day is, will lower your cholesterol, whatever, so and they throw stuff out there just to get a rise out of you. Like they say, there's no such thing as bad press, right? So there's no such thing as bad engagement. And so I'm like, whoa, I've already, in the last several years, I've backed off of taking the bait, but like I'm seeing it more and more. And it's like, so if you want to be different now, don't fall for the bait. If you want to zig when everybody zags, start unsubscribing from a bunch of stuff. Don't let these people jerk your chain. Don't fall for the fake attack on your legs, right? And then they're going to end up choking you. So recognize the true attack, and otherwise, keep your powder dry. Right? Like, stay calm, back away, turn this shit off, go watch a movie, go for a walk, whatever it is that helps you calm down. Because one way or another, war is coming, right? New competitor, AI, whatever it is, actual war, whatever, war is coming. Okay, get prepared. Oh no, you're such a negative. You're so pessimistic. No, I'm not. If I say it's going to rain, bring an umbrella. Leave 20 minutes early so you can get to your appointment. That's not negative. It's just there's a storm coming.
Yeah. I remember one of my mentors said, and I've lived by this, is because I've always been an upbeat and positive guy, despite the fact that you and I have probably been talking a little bit too much about the doom that's coming because we are in the middle of craziness. But he called it the positive power of negative preparation. And what he sort of means is, to your point, is that you know, it's almost like you're following Murphy's law, everything can go wrong or whatever, and still be optimistic at the same time. It's almost like, okay, assume that the airport's going to lose our luggage, everything's going to go bad, everything's going to go wrong, but we're still going to make it to our destination. We're still going to get there. So it's a positive thing to be prepared for something that is going to need an advanced skill set, even if you don't need it. Be prepared and calm, and that's not negative and being pessimistic. That's being optimistic, knowing that you're going to get there, but it's not going to be easy. I mean, in my book, available now. Oh, by the way, Wes, I changed for you guys. I changed the price of this on Amazon to $1. Like I said to my partner Naomi, take the money off this because I'm going on Wes's podcast. So if any of those guys find this, on Amazon, it'll be $1, right? But the last thing I say in this book, and now here's the spoilers. I'm giving you the literally last sentence, that if you're going to do something that's incredible, the odds are against you. So you need to be prepared with a skill set that is highly advanced in your field of expertise, because the quote is, and I'm going to misquote myself here. I'm sure I haven't quite honed this quote yet into something that like Jim Rohn's version of this would be, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. Right. Yeah. That's one of the greatest quotes of all time. I love it. Right. So my version of my little bit of wisdom might be, if the chances are 1 in a million of you getting your dreams and goals done, be the one, right? Because someone's got to be the one. One of my heroes, Arnold Schwarzenegger, again, that's me and Arnold on the front cover there working out at Gold's Gym. Arnold said, everything's impossible until someone does it. Yeah. So if you want to do something that's truly incredible, it ain't you're not gonna fall into that success. You are gonna have to go through some hardship that you need to have been prepared for to overcome. Some of that hardship will blindside you, so you're gonna need some resilience to be able to bounce back from the hardship that you didn't anticipate and that you didn't prepare for. And the road to success isn't going to be a straight line. It's going to be like this all the way. But if you keep heading in that same direction, you're going to be sweet. And, because I say, that thing that I'm saying, if the chances of 1 in a million of getting it done, be the one. When you think about it, people my age, 50 years old, 51, I hired a billionaire. I hired Richard Branson to come and hang out with us for half a day at one of our events. Georges St-Pierre, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Eric Thomas, your countryman, the great E.T., Eric Thomas, the greatest speaker on planet Earth. A bunch of the stars of $1 Million Listing, the real estate TV show. We don't have that over here, so we watch your $1 Million Listing. Fantastic. Josh Altman, Josh Flagg, Matt Altman, Ryan Serhant, all of those guys. I've hired all of them, and you think, even just the celebrity guys, my hero in entrepreneurialism and stuff was Richard Branson. I had a list with Arnold at the top, Richard Branson, Georges St-Pierre was my wrestling hero, and I had all these heroes. Gary Vaynerchuk, my marketing hero, and I started ticking them off as I'd hire them and bring them to Australia. You think, how many people would love to have Arnold Schwarzenegger and his contact details on their phone, or Richard Branson's or whatever? And I think, there would be millions of people that would have wanted to do that. And it seems like I'm the 1 in a million who did it, and it's all based on those principles we've talked about, the preparedness, the going through the pain and the study that, the metaphor, I love the metaphor of fighting, because look at the pain you've had to go through to prepare yourself physically to go up against virtually anyone. Statistically, if you're at a brown belt and about to be black, statistically, I heard Jocko Willink say it, that it's the closest thing to a superpower you can have. Like literally most people that you approach in the street, you will not come second in a physical confrontation with them in normal circumstances. Sure, there might be weaponry. Sure, they might be a 2nd degree black belt or whatever, but chances are Wes has prepared himself. So certainly doing that in your business and in your life, we need to get the appropriate set of skills that a BJJ expert's got in passing guard, takedowns, strike defense, all of those things. Well, what's the equivalent of that in business? One of the skills that I wanted to master, and I did want to ask Wes about when I first met Wes, he was the master of multimedia, multi-step follow-up technology. So meaning when you meet someone who is not quite ready to make a purchase in your field of expertise, because what are the odds that what you've got to sell, especially if it's a highly specialized or a, something that people don't do every day, like a grocery store or something, but if your skill set and your product, whatever it is that you're selling, is a purchase that happens infrequently, what are the odds that you stumble across that prospect right at the moment they're going to make that transaction that they might make once every 5 years, whatever the case may be? So you need to be a master of, meeting them today in some way. Heaven forbid you might grab a copy of a book for free or for $1, because you might not need what I do right now. But if you need me in 3 years, if you do get a copy of my book, make no mistake, you'll get a text from me. You'll get a letter put into that book that offers you something equally as cheap and affordable, but you'll get a letter that says BLUF, like bottom line up front. That's just one of the headlines that it might be, and I don't know which letter I'll put in there, but you will hear from me in multiple times, and then it might be years from now that you might think, who's that bald psycho from Australia? He seemed to have some good ideas on, using the power of celebrity to inflate your own personal brand. It's one of the strategies that I've used. And, and so years from now, you might connect with me because I've stayed in touch and stayed relevant with you with a multimedia, multi-step campaign. And at the time, Wes was a master of the currently hottest piece of that technology. And so, whatever those, there's probably only half a dozen high-level skill sets and principles that you'll need to be successful in your business. So what are they? And who's got those high-level skill sets, and go and get trained in them. And, if you're heading in that direction, it's going to be hard for you to miss if you're diligent enough to stay the course for the extended period of time and give that training the time frame that it needs. You're not going to be a surgeon with a one-day course. It's going to be a 4-10-year learning. So whatever the learning process is in your world of business, you got to get those 6 or 7 high-level fundamentals, and you're going to make it. So don't know what that was in response to, Wes, but I hope that made some sense.
It's good. I mean, it is true. But okay, you bring up, the duration, and I mean, nobody wants, well, very few want to put in that time and effort and energy to master something, right? Everybody wants that shortcut. They want, hey, get my Chat GPT prompts to create a 7-figure course in just 5 minutes, and it's like, who was it? Seth Godin, right? Marketers are liars, or, marketers ruin everything. So they're ruining Chat GPT and AI. But I mean, you've had a lot of success bringing in these kind of celebrities and stuff. And it's like, I look around, it's like, I'm fighting that urge, right? I'm putting together a sales / jiu-jitsu training live event.
Wow.
And so I'm torn between getting like some celebrity jiu-jitsu guy, because the reality is, like the guy that I have, we're going to do this in Texas first. He's a 3rd-degree black belt, Army communications officer, rugby coach. This guy will wreck 99% of people on the planet. Okay. And so you get a 3rd-degree black belt. And you take a 3-day class, you're not going to get 1% of his knowledge. It's true. And so, okay, let's say go get Georges St-Pierre or Royler Gracie, so they're not going to teach you anything. If I get a bunch of purple and blue purple belts, maybe a couple browns, it's more than they can handle.
Well, I guess the thing that I would say is the job of Richard Branson, the job of Georges St-Pierre in my events is not to be great on the stage and teach amazing concepts. That's my job when they invest in coaching. And it might not even be me. They might go to another coach or whatever. But what they're there for is to give you the maximum opportunity, because the celebrity thing, and this harks back to when we were apes, man, back in the day of evolution. They showed some primates a photo of the famous primate, and this is weird, man, but I tell you, and I'm only basing this off studies, so it probably was someone like Seth Godin, love the guy, but it was an author in one of their books, and they said that the primates would rather look at the photo of the famous primate than eat food. So that means this celebrity idolizing and worship of whoever is perceived to be the famous human is built into our DNA, that we look to these famous people, whether it's an actor, a Hollywood actor, you know, when we were growing up, or nowadays for our kids and grandkids, it might be Mr. Beast or PewDiePie or whoever the hottest YouTuber is. But we are drawn to celebrity. So having the famous person there is the bait that means that if you're associating yourself with a famous person like a Richard Branson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Georges St-Pierre, etc., the audience puts you up a category in positioning. It thinks that if you're hanging out wrestling Georges St-Pierre in his private jiu-jitsu ring on a promotional video, Wes is now more of an authority to be listened to. He's more credible. He is more, you know, the celebrity rubs off, because, you know, when you look at The Rock's feed or whatever, one of the things that celebrities have in common, one of the ways with which we identify celebrities, is they hang out with other celebrities. Like you look at Dwayne will be, Kevin Hart will be doing a video, and Dwayne Johnson will end up in the comments, and they'll have some banter between each other, right? So the fact that, you know, you see Kevin Hart and Dwayne hanging out, you see Arnold now, used to be utter enemies with Sylvester Stallone. Now they're best buddies, you know.
Are they really enemies?
Absolutely. I mean, I got to tell you this story. They were brutal enemies. They hated each other because they were in competition with each other big time. I mean, Commando was a response to Rambo. And so, do you remember a movie of Stallone's called Stop or My Mum Will Shoot?
Yeah.
With Estelle Getty? That was Arnold. Here's what happened. Arnold let it go out there and pranked Stallone, and this is when they hate each other. So this wasn't a friendly prank. This was a troll back in the late 80s, early 90s. Arnold put it out there that he really wanted this movie, Stop or My Mum Will Shoot. Arnold knew it was a stinker, right? He knew it. And he let it get out there to Sly's camp that Arnold wanted it bad. And they let it out to Sly's camp. I can get you this movie. Arnold wants it. And so Sly signed it, made the movie, stunk up the joint with it, and it was all because Arnold wanted that to happen. I mean, it was brutal. And I mean, you mentioned, he was a prankster, man. You mentioned Minnesota before. Arnold let it get out there that he had one of the guys on Predator measure Jesse Ventura, former governor of Minnesota, who was in Predator. He had one of the guys doing Jesse's measurements or whatever, and he said, wow, your bicep's an inch bigger than Arnold's, right? And Arnold set this all up. So Arnold and Jesse, like Jesse, now that he knew in Jesse's head that his bicep was an inch bigger than Arnold's, Jesse found a way to kind of get it, because they'd always work out every morning before shooting, right? So Jesse somehow gets it into the conversation. My arms are bigger than even yours, Mr. Terminator, or whatever, doing my worst Jesse Ventura impression. And Arnold said, oh, no, then I can't even do an Arnold either. But Arnold pranks him, and they have a bet, only for a bottle of champagne, as the story goes. But they bet whose arm is bigger. Arnold's is bigger, and he set it up to have Jesse so confident. And Jesse's here on the news saying, I've got bigger arms or whatever. And he doesn't. And Arnold just totally pranked him. So, so definitely Sly and Arnold were absolute enemies, but now they're buds. Getting back to the point, one of the indicators that you're famous is you are hanging out with other famous people. So that's what having the famous version coming to your event will do. It will be the magnet that will bring the people. Because if the people aren't there, and you're saying you couldn't get, like I hung out with Georges St-Pierre for half a day over in Montreal and then a couple of days here in Australia. Went to Sydney, did a press conference or whatever. I didn't glean virtually anything from it other than inspiration of what you can be. When you can outweigh someone, I outweighed him by 30 kilos and he can still treat you like a rag doll. right? 30 kilos, and he literally could handle me like I know it's a horrific metaphor, but you remember there was a child who fell into the ape pit that time. I think it was called Harambe, my kids said. And that was Georges St-Pierre was the ape, and I was the child. He could do with me what he wanted, being outweighed by 30 kilos. You know, that's what 30 kilos is 70 pounds. 70-pound differential, and he could treat me like a rag doll. So that's what I got from, but the celebrity coming to your event is there as bait. So, you know, for me, and I'm coming in from the other side of the world, but if you could get Jocko Willink there, he's the bait that brings them in. Very credible, very competent in the space, very good. He's the perfect combo for your sales and kind of jiu-jitsu combo, because he's famous enough, credible enough, skilled enough in both, got a foot in both camps, and gives you some credibility by hanging with Jocko.
How do you bridge that gap though? It's like it's the chicken and the egg, right? When you do a brand new event, it may not work.
Yeah, good point. No, good point.
Right?
Actually, very good point.
And so
Jocko may be the perfect fit. But,
and I know Jocko. I mean, Jocko's keynote speaking. I mean, he's $100,000 at least. So. Right. So that's not a fit. Now, I could probably find, I'll be in Dallas. So there's a lot of celebrities. I can probably get somebody to come out for an hour or two, $5 to $10 grand. If I get them local, and I know some people, maybe call in a favor, you know, get some $20,000 keynote to come in for, you know, hey, it's local, just drive over, say hi, you know, leave, you know, get them for $5 grand. Okay. That's not bad. And so
what I would say, Wes, let me give you my blueprint of how I got, because you're right. It's bad advice for me to say to a rookie, if one of your audience members was wanting to do something in their vicinity, you don't start with your first event or your first event in a new experiment with a, with $100 grand keynote speaker or whatever the case may be. So, and I've had those multiple, you know, I haven't quite yet had a 7-figure keynote speaker, but my last event, if you include the venue and the marketing and the keynote speakers and all of that, was $850,000 was the cost for the event. And it made $820,000, right? So it was basically a break-even proposition. But what that bought me was international even, but certainly national. In my niche, in my country, it gave me universal name recognition. Like it literally put me on the map. But I didn't have 850 grand sitting there clear and liquid. So here's the formula that I did it. My first event, and not everyone's going to be wanting to do events, but so if you're not in, now most businesses could stand with finding a way to eventize your business, really, because if you can put 100 people into a room, then you're selling 1 to 100. It gives you leverage rather than doing your sales one-on-one. Very powerful to be able to do it that way. So my first event was 12 people that I begged to come. Right, that I begged to come. And I made one sale at that and got my first one-on-one client that was ended up being about $12,000 for the year, right? With my one first sale, with my one first client that I'd already trained well that I could actually be of some value to that person. I was very confident and able to do that. So one out of those 12 bought. With that $10,000, it's like I'm playing poker. That for the started this in 2008. So what's that? 16 years. For the last 16 years, I've been in a poker game. And every time I do an event or every year is like another hand. So every time I do an event, even in that first event, when I got $12,000 that I hadn't earned before, I pushed the $12,000 back in and I did my second event. My second event, more of a marketing budget. Still the speakers were the first event was just me for half a day. The second event was me and one other speaker that I didn't pay. I didn't have to pay. I begged him because he wanted the audience as well. And so I pushed the $12,000 in, and that $12,000 put 50 people in that second room. And with that event, I made another, I think after all of the revenue and all of that was split, I think I had another $15,000 that I'd earned. So with that money, I bought a speaker's high level $10,000 a year coaching program. So I pushed the chips back in and I did another event. My third event was 200 people came. And it was a 2-day event because at that first event that was half a day with me and this other guy, one of his staff members said, you got to do a 2-day event. That's where it's at. So I'm a good student. I followed that advice, did a 2-day event, 200 people. And with that, I made 100,000. So with that, I gave that first mentor that I bought his program, if you want to call it that. I bought his high-level, year-long You Become Me program, where he literally taught me how to do him. Like Tony Robbins, it wasn't Tony Robbins, but like Tony Robbins' high-end 100 grand a year hang with Tony thing, right? Like that. So I did that equivalent. It was 50 grand for the year. And so, but eventually, I suppose the principle there is, I did one tiny event that I begged people to come. My marketing was, please, will you come and sit in the audience? Don't buy. I just need someone to be sitting there so I'm not embarrassed. That was literally what I did, and got 12 people there. But like a poker player, every hand I'm going all in. Now, sometimes I win the pot and some profit comes back. It's wonderful. Sometimes I split the pot and I barely break even, right? But by breaking even, like with that last big one I got, where Arnold was headlining and a bunch of Australian celebrities were the kind of the undercard, if you want to call it that, using the fighting metaphor. We got Arnold Schwarzenegger as the big keynote, and we got a bunch of undercard fighters, all who are well known here, and it only broke even. But what did that buy me? It bought me industry-wide name recognition. It bought me thousands of people who came to the event but didn't invest. So it gave me a follow-up sequence of people that I have lived off, because every time I do an event, there's a bunch of people who don't buy anything. Well, that becomes a 40,000 strong database, 5 to 10% of which buy something in every subsequent year, so long as I stay in their world. So that set me up for a lifetime of being okay monetarily, because I have a database of people who know me, many of whom have spent a couple of days with me, so know what I'm all about, weren't ready to do anything with me at the time I met them, but enough people were ready at the time I met them to cover the costs of whatever insanity I'm doing. So what I would say is, again, I sort of gave you the advice, hire Jocko, because I know you've been a success in so many areas of your life. You might be able to afford Jocko even on an experiment. But if you're sort of still in really playing in a new field with a new style of event where you're taking two relatively disparate things, even though there are crossovers in BJJ and sales, if that is an experiment that is unproven at this stage, then yeah, you might not want to go risking your family's 100K on bringing in Jocko before you've proved the concept will work. So start, again, however you've got to beg, borrow, or steal to get some bodies in that room to proof of concept. Then once you've got the your numbers, your percentages and all of those things, you can then start pushing more chips in, knowing you've got pocket aces. It's no guarantee you're going to win, but at least, because every time I've gone all in, if you want to use that as a metaphor, for the last 15 years, the only one that's been a significant loss was the Georges St-Pierre one. Nothing against Georges St-Pierre. It's just that the message to market match, he may have been my hero because he was on my list of who I wanted to work with, but it was just a bit too much cramming it in to get 1,000 people in that audience, which is what you need when you bring in the greatest of all time. You got to pay some money for that, right? So it didn't make as much dough as the event cost. I don't care. I got to wrestle GSP. I don't care. It could cost me money. But other than that one, pretty much I think every single one of my events either broke even or made a profit. So I'm just going all in, and almost every time, worst case scenario is, hell, I've done some work and I didn't make any money, but I've gained notoriety. I've gained some fame in my industry. So, so there'll be something in that for you, whereas I would say now you've got to figure out what resources you're willing to invest. And if you've got some contacts where you can call in some favors of local Dallas type folks, then sure, get some B-level celebrities. And I know they won't want to hear themselves called as that. If they're the fullback for the Dallas Cowboys or the quarterback, again, we don't have NFL down here, but you mentioned rugby before. I can't believe there's a rugby coach in your neck of the woods. So if you can get some sort of level of that, it'll help bring in some bodies. Like you popped into one of my events when I was playing in a new market in LA. I did an event in LA. No one knew me in LA. So I did beg, borrow, and steal. I called in a favor from Josh Altman to pop into my event and headline my event in LA. It was a free event. I didn't charge anything. I think there were 400 people registered for that event and 200 turned up, because whenever something's free, your turn up rate will be maybe half. So, and yeah, Wes came to that event. It was the first time I'd seen him since I met him. It was great to catch up. And yeah, so I did what I'm maybe suggesting might be a move forward for you, is I begged, and Josh popped in, which was pretty cool of him. He's come to Australia a couple of times. We've developed a good friendship. So, yeah, there'll be something in there both for maybe for what you're going to do with your event, and but certainly for your audience. You don't have to wait till you can afford to hire Oprah or hire Michael Jordan or in my case, my list of Schwarzenegger, and Oprah's on my list, and Michael J. Fox is on my list, and we almost had Michael J. Fox at one of our events, because his story about working full-time Family Ties and making Back to the Future at night on no sleep for a year. God damn, you want it. You do what Michael J. Fox did in that time. Incredible. So, but his Parkinson's gets in the way and stuff. So you can't we had something sort of set up that he could medicate himself to be functional to do keynote speeches and appearances and things, It's just the trip to Australia as well was kind of prohibitive. But yeah, you got to put it out there and, find out who your version of that is, and then find out what budget it's going to take. Because here's the thing, you might say that hiring Arnold Schwarzenegger, like I did, he's my childhood hero. No matter what I do now, no one that I ever worked with is ever going to beat that, because I've idolized him since I was this high. You know what I mean? And people might think that that's out of the realm of possibility. But as I did, I thought that could not be done. But, yeah, I don't know if I told you this last time we was on our last podcast, but I first reached out to Arnold because I'd made the mistake at one of my events earlier in the piece to tell some of my students that was one of my goals. So I put it out there that, you got to set big goals. And and it was Eric Thomas who was speaking at one of my events, and ET said, what would your goals be if you weren't afraid of success? And so I wrote down on my notes, have Arnold Schwarzenegger headline at one of my events. And what I did was, my speech was later that day. So I whipped up a PowerPoint slide. And actually, I don't know if you can share your screen. Let me share my screen and see if this works, Wes. Sure. Let me see. Entire screen. Share. Is it letting me? Might not be letting me, bro. So I'll send you the slides so maybe you can have your editors inserted in. But I made up this really bad PowerPoint slide of my brand with Arnold Schwarzenegger's head as a speaker. It was really bad. It was bad photoshopping. It was bad. But I showed that to the audience. I said, hey, when ET asked about the goals, that's mine, right? But then that night I was at home and I wondered to myself, and I imagined one of my best students, multi-million-dollar real estate agent, met me as a standard real estate agent, which is just above broke, made $100,000 his first year. And when you make $100,000 in real estate, you got to split it with what you guys call the broker, the boss, the owner of the company. So he made normal wages in his first year of real estate, but he's been $1 million ever since for a decade. And I imagined at this event, because Chris was in the audience, and I thought to myself, it just hit me lying in bed at night going, what am I going to say when Chris asks me in a year, how's that Schwarzenegger goal going? Because I'd put it out there to my audience that my goal is to have Arnold Schwarzenegger speak at one of these things. And I did say that if I wasn't afraid, that would be my goal. That'd be my dream. Can't happen. But then I thought, here I am telling these guys they can do whatever they want. They can make it. They can set their goals. They can dream big and take names, whatever I might be sitting there trying to inspire. And then I thought, what am I going to say when Chris asks me, how's it going? Oh, yeah, that was just BS. No, I couldn't sleep at night if I didn't try. So here's the guilty admission, and this is mainly going out to your USA audience, Wes, so I can share this with you, and my peeps down here won't know how embarrassed I am, that I reached out to find Arnold because at the time when I first set that as a goal, Donald Trump, before he was President Trump, this is 2012, 13, he was just a real estate legend and maybe he'd done The Apprentice, perhaps, but he was just Trump pre-politics. And he'd spoken in Sydney, and word on the street was the speaker bill for that event for Donald Trump was $2 million. And I thought to myself, well, if that's Trump, Arnold Schwarzenegger is 10 times more famous than Donald Trump at that time. So Arnold, and he'd just been paid like 30 million or something for Terminator 2 or whatever. So I thought, there is no way the numbers work on me fulfilling that goal that I've set, that I've told my people. It cannot happen because his appearance fee will be millions, and the maths just does not work at all for me to even come close to breaking even. So I set out to find Arnold, and it was hard to track down anyone who represents him. Because if you just put in the Arnold Schwarzenegger appearance fee or something, you'll find a million people who say they represent him, but they don't. They're like a lead generation aggregator. What they're wanting to do is they get your inquiry. They know who to go to hire Arnold. They tack 10% on for themselves. And so they're just nothing more than a middleman. So I had to get rid of a few of them. But I finally found Arnold's representation, right? And I got a quote as to how much it would cost to bring Arnold to Australia. And at first it was no amount of money, dude. You haven't got enough because we ain't coming. You know, it's got to. But my question was, I said, okay, well, look, just keep me on the books if ever it was convenient, anytime, any place. You tell me where, you tell me when, you tell me how long for, and you tell me how much, and I'll make my world revolve around that requirement. And they said, yeah, well, it's not going to happen, but yeah, we'll keep you on the books. It was a flat out get lost. But then over the next 6 months, the get lost became, hey, look, where might going to be? To we're going to be in the region, to we're going to be in Australia for an engagement that Arnold's got. So if you wanted to do something this time, this day, this date, this amount, it could be done. And here was the problem, Wes. I was sitting there with a life-changing decision to make. The quote was too much for me to say yes to, right? Couldn't afford it. Couldn't even afford the deposit. But it was too little that I didn't have my excuse. Because if I'd have had a $4 million quote, I could have went to Chris Gilmore when he asked me, how's that Schwarzenegger goal going? And I could have said to him, it's $4 million, mate. You know my events. You know the numbers don't work. Here's what the numbers would have to be. Every participant at this 2-day event would have to pay $1,000, and there'd have to be 1,000 people there. They'd all have to buy our $3,000 coaching program, and you know they won't. The numbers, the maths just doesn't work to make that happen. But the amount was too much to say yes to and too little to say no to. So I had to say yes, and I did. I mortgaged a house. I pulled every cent I had. That event hadn't gone well. I was bankrupt, but I thought, well, what a way to go. Go bankrupt, hiring your childhood hero. It's all good. I called into all of my coaching clients, everyone that I'd ever done business with, and one-on-one I said, hey, you know that coaching money you pay me? I need a year in advance, right? And I wasn't joking, and I wasn't joking at all. I got some checks from my clients a year in advance in order to help me pull together enough money to put down the deposit, the 6-figure deposit, on making it happen. And then I pulled the Wes Schaefer bloody move out of it. At the end of every bloody post, you'll notice that Wes signs it off. Now, shut up and go sell something, right? So he'll give you some knowledge, and then he'll say, now get lost, go sell something, right? So every day from dawn when I woke up till I crashed, unable to keep my eyes open at night, I would be selling enough tickets to that event to pay the next installment of that bill. Because the venue needs to be paid a 6-figure sum. The talent needs to be paid in full before they'll even get on a plane. You know, every bill for any sort of event needs to be paid before the event, and most of the revenue is generated after the event or at the event. So that's what I did, is I just scraped, begged, borrowed, and stole to get enough to start the ball rolling. Then I just sold and sold for 6 months, that as a bill come in, I'd sell enough to cover it. Bill come in, sell enough to cover it. Bill come in, sell enough to cover it. So, you know, it was, I suppose that was the way that I went up to hiring an Arnold, is I'd made enough money and enough of a reputation to be able to pull together the resources to make it happen. But I also had to go on such a giant leap of faith, scared to death. I mean, you can imagine everything is on the line. And I'm getting feedback from some of my marketing posts, because this is early in the days of social media, sort of 10 years ago. 2013, 14, and 15 was this era of me sort of blowing up. And so I'm getting feedback on social media from people accusing me of it being a attention-getting hoax. that I haven't hired Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's a lie. And there's no way that, because of course they would believe that, if they couldn't do it, there is no way that I've done it. So, it was an insane time. But, when you get through that war, that battle, that challenge, and, you end up looking back on it with pride, you think, bloody hell, the odds of me making that happen were millions to one. And yet I'm the one. Someone's got to be the one. That's the thing. Otherwise, it's impossible, right? It's either impossible or it's unlikely. Well, if it's unlikely but possible, then you can do it as well. Nothing special about me. No money, that I didn't have the resources to be able to pull this off. It wasn't just writing a check. It was everything that had led up to that point that allowed that to happen. So, whereas if this new event of yours is going to be a winner, and I know it's your passion, you've got to find a way that, is there enough people who want to be able to sell and protect themselves physically? Does the audience already exist, or do you have to turn salespeople into BJJ fans and get them to see the wisdom in that? Or do you have to turn the wisdom of BJJ people and say, hey, you want to be able to sell some stuff as well? Well, here's how BJJ and sales are similar, and create an audience of that. And in those early days, see what you can make happen, beg, borrow, and steal from anyone you need. And look, man, that includes me, bro. Not that I'm famous or anything, but mate, if you've got the ability to get my ass to Texas, you do not get a fee from me, right? I'll get my ass there, and I'll drop some knowledge.
Hey, that's why I chose Dallas. It's easy to get to for everybody.
I think there's an international airport there, from Australia. I think you can fly into there. Last time I was in Fort Worth, I saw, damn, I'm flying back through goddamn another connection to LA to home, and there's a direct Sydney flight from Dallas. So, I've been to Fort Worth a couple of times. I love Texas, man. Love it.
Yeah, most people don't know what a great circle is, right? They think like that distance from LA to Dallas is the extra distance, but when you fly basically over the North Pole, it's about the same amount of time, right? I mean, obviously it depends on where you're coming from, but there's a whole thing about great circles we could get into.
Oh, very cool, man.
So after you spend that kind of money on someone like Arnold, of course they have to like you, right? You have to like them, but do they literally, like, can you call them? Like, could you text them? Could you send them a funny meme?
Depends on you. Really, you're right, man. They have to like you. So here was the thing with me and Arnold. If I wasn't me, I don't know, look, the way I kind of describe it, because he's only indicated this to me through his actions, not through his words, right? Because his way of, like, his manager was even telling me, because he'd always tease me about my weight, and he'd always tease me about everything. And, and he'd say, that means you're in his inner circle. He doesn't tease anyone that he doesn't like.
Oh, nice.
Right? So the fact that he's always ribbing me, even in his promotional videos and I'll send this to you if you want to insert it in there. Even in his promotional video, he's teasing me about my weight, saying, Glenn, I can't wait to see you at the Total Success Summit. But remember, Glenn, you got to get your body fat down. He's teasing me about this. So when we met the first time, right, I hired him. I was fanboy, and he knew it. I'd read his autobiography 3 times, listened to it twice on audio, and read it once on a physical book. So I knew Arnold like Arnold knew Arnold. So when I first met him, I was so nervous. I'm meeting my childhood goddamn hero. So he knew there was fanboy energy. And a bit later in the conversation, I was upstairs with him backstage. And I said, you remember when we've met downstairs in the car park, man? It was like when you met Reg Park for the first time. Because he was describing in his book, when he met Reg Park, that was Arnold's hero, Steve Reeves, Reg Park, the actors who played Hercules in those early movies. And I said, it was like meeting, like when you met Reg Park. And I was so nervous. I didn't know whether to try and be cool and say, come with me if you want to live, or just be like a nervous little schoolgirl. And he goes, no, it's not come with me if you want to live anymore. It's live with me if you want to come. Right. And then his partner, Heather, said to him, Arnold, you can't say that. He goes, don't worry, it's just us boys having boy talk, And I'm like, this is Arnold Schwarzenegger having boy talk with me. I'm like, amazing. And so he took a liking to me. And he said, what are you doing about a month from then? He said, what are you doing in April in a month's time, April 24, whatever. And I said, whatever you want me to be doing. He said, I'll come over to my house. I'm having a little poker game. He says, and don't worry. And I can't impersonate him. He goes, don't worry. It's not professional poker players. It's just, and I quote, it's just regular people like us. And I'm like, Arnold, you have got a very different definition of regular people like us than but yeah. He invited me to his house, and like there's 40 people at his house. There's Stallone, Jason Statham, Tom Arnold. There's all these legends there, and me playing poker at Arnold Schwarzenegger's house. Like crazy. So that wouldn't have happened if I just hired him and he didn't like me. I didn't have some rapport building skills. I didn't, I wasn't inherently, learned how to, kind of communicate with. So being a fanboy is half the equation because I treated him with respect. I'd read his autobiography so I could talk to him like he would talk to a friend, because just like a friend would know his stories and be able to kind of talk about his life and, oh, do you remember when? So could I. Because that book, Total Recall, isn't a phoned-in one. It's thick and it's complete and it's very self-revealing, And so I knew his life, so I could talk about his history, and he's proud of his history. So we had a great rapport, But he's so famous. Just being a fanboy isn't enough, because the other side of that equation is I had the budget that I could be able to hire him. Because he's in his 70s. He needs to monetize his time to leave the legacy that he wants to leave. He's still very big on the after-school programs, because they've done the maths and they say if you can stop a teen child in that time between when the parents get home at 6 p.m. and 3 p.m. when school finishes, that window of mischief, if you can keep them busy and engaged and doing something positive during that time, there's a net positive benefit to society monetarily. So Arnold's heavily invested in after-school programs. It's kind of one of his charities of choice. So he uses a lot of his time, effort, and whatever. Again, one of the events because I've done business with Arnold now 6 times, and one of them he donated the whole proceeds of my contribution to that charity. So it's a big call. So yeah, the two things that I had to be able to contact Arnold when he wrote his next book and say, hey, let me buy a couple in bulk and let's do an interview. Let's do whatever it is that I can message him and his people and get a response, heaven forbid. My kids do tease me when they see the SMS thread with me and Arnold. They see me typing out, blah, 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 blah. And he'll come back with, okay, right? 1-word answers. And my kids tease me, but at least I get an okay back. Yeah. But yeah, so I reckon it's a combo of being successful enough that I can be of some value to him, let's say. And that's not him being callous. That's just the two things that I see as the reason that we're pretty cool and the reason that I got the invite to his house. And then when I was at his house, I wasn't a douchebag, being all, I was a little bit douchebaggy, being all fanboy with Stallone and Statham and all of those guys. But because I was Australian, I was a bit of an anomaly. I was the only Aussie there. So I was, I was wearing a big, bright, floral pink jacket, So people were asking me, where'd you get that jacket? That's the best thing ever. So, so I got an invite back. If I'd have been a tosser, I never would have got the invite back. So it's a sort of a combination of those two things, being prepared and being, knowledgeable about the rapport building elements of how to build rapport with someone like that. And also, financial means that I'm not going to be a sponge that's going to be just a taker from his, because just hanging out with him does put you in a different category in many areas of your life, and this isn't true of just Arnold. This is true of every celebrity, just by the very fact that the world knows who they are, does have that power to rub off some of that influence, credibility, and all of that on you. And similarly, in a negative way as well, like, Mr. Trump, I may think that he's done some good things in terms of his presidential historic run. And I think I'd love it if he chose Vivek as his VP, because when I see that Vivek Ramaswamy speak, I think you are the future of American politics, I hope. Unless he's a sociopath and a method actor. Because if he's the real deal with what he's saying, my opinion is he's the greatest thing to ever hit politics, and I wish him all the best. But to half of the country over there, association with Donald Trump can get you in jail, and get you in trouble. So it can work both ways, but certainly it does rub off if you can be associated with someone positive. But then I suppose that's the thing, whereas in today's world, is anyone purely good? Like they're accusing Oprah of bad stuff, Dwayne, The Rock of bad stuff, Rogan of bad stuff, the Epstein list. Who knows who's on that? But they tell me that's going to have everyone we've idolized on that list, and that's why they're keeping it quiet. Who knows? But those principles have certainly served me well in my business.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it was a positive monetary event having him there.
Yeah, well, I built a multi-million-dollar business off all of the cumulative success. Because probably if I only did it once, it's probably not going to be, if I only did it once, I would have broken even, and that's that, But the fact that I built up to it, so I had a growing reputation, then I hit a pretty high point where I'm hiring for a couple of years straight. I'm hiring Branson 1 year. The next year, so Arnold, then Richard. Then I had Arnold booked. Okay, here's a story for you. I was the first victim of the Donald Trump presidency directly because I had Arnold booked, contracted on paper to come back down to Australia the following year. We were going to do another event a year later. And what happened was Donald Trump decides to run for president. They call Arnold to be the new host of The Apprentice. Remember that year that Arnold did The Apprentice? Mm-hmm. And so the first casualty of the Donald Trump presidency was Arnold Schwarzenegger bailed on my gig and couldn't do it, right? So what my event was going to be was Arnold Schwarzenegger, Gary Vaynerchuk as the co-headliner, and then, all of us ragtag bunch of Aussies or whatever. And when Arnold couldn't make it, Gary V became my headliner. And actually I brought in another American, a 14-year-old child called Caleb Maddox, who's now 20. This is some time ago. Actually, he's in his early 20s. But at the time he was 14, he'd been reading books like I've got in the bookshelf back there, Think and Grow Rich, A Success System That Never Fails, Personality Plus, Magic of Thinking Big. He'd been reading books like that. And his dad, instead of giving him pocket money, look him up, Caleb Maddox, guys. Have a look at his young, when he was 14. He was giving keynote speeches at 14, better than anyone I'd ever seen. So I brought a 14-year-old child. I gave this 14-year-old child $11,000 for 90 minutes of his time, 14. And he came and he spoke at that event. So it was him and Gary V were my thing. And he was a big fan of Gary V. So he wanted to do it because he wanted to meet Gary.
Did Caleb have to sit in the green room with a headset on because he was too young to hear Gary's language?
No, his dad was like you've got to love his dad. His dad, because Caleb saw his friends getting pocket money. And his dad said to him, even at 6, well, the world isn't going to just give you pocket money, just give you money for nothing. So here's what I'm going to do. Every one of these books I give you, you read it. And I know some of these principles and concepts won't make sense to you, but you read the book, you write out an essay on what you learned from that book. And every time you do that, I'll give you $20. And he had read hundreds of those books between 6 and 11. I think he wrote his first book at 11 because he had been reading a book every week or two of that caliber on the principles of success from the time he was 6. So by the time he was 14 and I hired him, he was one of the best speakers I'd ever seen. Unbelievable. So yes, it was a badly wrapped gift where my hero had to bail because of your president, Mr. Trump. But it was a badly wrapped gift that ended up being a gift because getting to spend some time with that inspirational young man was unbelievable. I took him to Arnold's the next time I went. Next time I got an invite, I took Caleb to introduce him to Arnold. They were sharing stories about, because Arnold, I remember Arnold was telling Caleb a story when people would say that he's working too hard and that he shouldn't be doing what he's doing. He should enjoy his childhood. And Caleb's answer to that was, and I saw him very respectfully say to a lady at my event who said it with an accusing tone, feeling sorry for him that he's missing out on his childhood. And he said, very respectfully, he was so respectful to this lady, he said, ma'am, I really thank you for the concern. I really do appreciate it. I do get that a fair bit. But what would you have me do? Like, play video games like my friends and other kids do? Just sit there playing video games? Would you want me listening to, this is what I would want to do. I love this. And, surely I'm not missing out on anything. I love it. This is what I would want to do. It seems to be nothing but positive. So I appreciate the concern. And there was words to that effect. It was like, boy, oh boy. Yeah. And
I'd literally asked my daughter, my 16-year-old daughter, last night at dinner. Because I see this all the time with grown men, just constantly playing video games, and I said, does everybody, like every male under 40, just play video games? She's like, I don't know about all the guys, about men, right? But she says all the boys do. She says, and it's irritating. I'm working on a book. I talked to my daughters, kind of got their permission, but the book is called "Please Date My Daughters." I'm working on the subtitle, but you know how Riz is a word, right? Charisma. I said the meaning, source, and necessity of developing Riz in business and in life.
Okay.
I had a guy on, Parker Olson, not too long ago, young guy, and he had gone all in. He moved from the West Coast to New York, and he said he was riding his bike through the park, and through the city, and he sees this beautiful girl, and he's like, oh man, she's nice. Oh, I'm gonna just keep riding. He says, no, turn around. So he forced enough, turns around, says hi. They talk, and they were going on a date, like right after we were doing the interview.
Nice.
And she said, I think she said she had lived there for 5 years and sat on that bench every day, and no one has approached her.
Yeah, that's got a name. I can't remember what the name is, but that's got a name, that the beautiful women don't get asked out on dates as much as we think.
Well, yes, that is true. But it's gotten even worse. There's this gal that I follow on Twitter, and she says, how do I make friends and find BF, boyfriend, in real life as an adult who's an introvert and likes staying at home? So she reads a bunch of books, and she blogs about books, but she's beautiful. And a woman posts, I just did this today, just a screenshot today, because I'm finding samples of this, right, as I'm building this out. And she's sitting, somebody replied, Barnes and Noble. Also, just read a book at the cafe. And the original lady posts,
just be in public. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, but she says, no one ever approaches me, sad face. Like that girl at the park for 5 years, sat there and had coffee and hung out, took her break. Nobody ever approached. I'm like, what? And my daughter, 5 daughters, like, they've hardly dated. And it's kind of bittersweet, right? Because the old adage, nobody's good enough for my daughters, right? But I mean, in reality, people need to get married and have kids. But people are afraid. Nobody.
Yep.
Like the internet is making people weak.
Virtual
world, work from home. People have no Riz, baby.
Yep. Yeah, it's a wild one. Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that one. Unfortunately, I'm well past that. Even though my book's called Punching Above Your Weight, and Naomi, Wes knows my partner Naomi, and I'm certainly, physically, she is far I'm that couple that walks down the street and they look at her and look at me and they go, how'd that happen? And but it is that men have different attributes to be attractive to females than where us blokes are primarily a visual creature that get attracted to something visually appealing in a female, and then we fall in love with a heart. Whereas women can actually find someone who looks like this and find them physically appealing. It's kind of crazy that how superior that the what's the word, evolution must have had with making women not be as visual a creature and as really as we are. So yeah, man, get your daughters, mate, a man of character, a jiu-jitsu guy, a church-going guy. Maybe even church. As much as historically I wasn't terribly religious, I mean, Jordan Peterson's dragged me back in. I watched his biblical lectures multiple times, seeing that you don't actually need to believe in that man in the sky granting wishes like a universal cosmic eBay wish-granting machine, that I don't need to believe that in order to see so much value in that Bible. God damn, that man's a genius, being able to take a almost atheist and bring him back to seeing so much value in the biblical texts and teachings. So that man, I tell you, anyone who either believes in the Bible sort of literally, or even sort of figuratively, let's just say, like maybe I do, seeing value in that Bible, even if it isn't predicated on a sentient being like us, you know, that God, whatever God might be, is, we can't think about what that is because we're us and it's it, you know. But I tell you, someone who believes those principles would certainly be someone that get my tick of approval for my mate Wes's daughters. You know, so maybe they should prospect for a church-going young man.
Yeah, amen. But you know, like what Jordan talks about, because I think he was kind of agnostic, right? And then he's kind of a non-denominational Christian. I think he's heading towards Catholicism, but
for sure, he's definitely drifting that way.
I had a chat with my oldest several years ago. I mean, he's 26, almost 27, super smart. And I'd mentioned Sun Tzu, and he literally said, he was like, "Why read something that old?" And I was like, "Dude, you got a lot to learn." But you know, if something does survive that long,
it's got something to it.
Like actively, like it's not just sitting in a library somewhere. The Bible, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, these things are actively read and studied and commented upon and taught. You know, military academies, we learn Sun Tzu. You know, it's applied every day. If something, so I don't care if you don't believe in Sun Tzu. Many people have and still are. So at a minimum, you better learn your enemy. Right. And in the Bible, you know, you can be a biggest atheist. That's fine. But if you want to understand everybody, if you want to convert and save everybody else from this dreaded Christianity, you better go read the damn Bible. So you understand what it is, right? Like I said in sales, it's our job to sell the way that our prospects buy. You know, first we have to be the same before we're different. I have to convince you that I've heard you, right? That I understand you, that I understand your point of view. I understand your pain. I understand the ramifications of that pain. Now allow me, once you truly believe that in your soul, you'll now listen to what I have to say and follow my recommendation. But until then, we're just going to be hammering at each other and nothing's going to happen. You know, but I think people like just hearing themselves talk. Yeah. That's why we're in the mess that we're in.
Yeah. Oh, but you're right about those principles, mate. If those principles of Sun Tzu, Bible, any of those ancient texts, if they've made it actively through the years, passed down those stories, and those stories would have started off verbal, because, you know, some of those books were written before there was a verbal a written language. You know, these stories were passed down and down and down. And so, you know, the Cain and Abel story, whether that is a historical recount of the first two humans, you know, because if Adam and Eve were created, then the first two humans that were born were Cain and Abel in a literal sense, or whether that's a meta-narrative, of sacrifices can be made where God deems them appropriate, and sacrifices, like in the case of, you know, so Cain's the bad one, isn't it? So Cain's sacrifices are said, God says, not good enough, get better. And Abel's sacrifices are deemed good job. Well, you know, that metaphor exists to this day. There are some people that say, but I worked hard and I didn't make it. Well, that's Cain. That's Cain who made the sacrifices that just weren't the sacrifices that were required to get the job done. So if those stories get passed down for centuries, for millennia, for thousands of years, then the fact is, even the atheist should be able to understand that means there's value in that story, because it's the linguistic and language equivalent of Charles Darwin, you know, Darwinism, you know, only because stories have been everywhere. Only these particular stories had the power to stand the test of time and be passed through, while all the other ones get deleted. just like all the other variants of the species got deleted and leaves us and all of the current species that are there. The thousands and millions of species that fell off the wayside were the ones that couldn't make it, same as the stories. The ones that have made it are the ones that have value. So learn them. There's going to be some intrinsic value to those stories in principles, even without the deity, let's just say. But I tell you, don't be surprised if you're dragged towards the deity, which I have been. I've been dragged before, but by almost to atheism to, I don't know what it was that started this, this show, but there's kind of got to be something. Because how does the intricacies of this complexity, the fact that we put food into this furnace and somehow this machine burns that food for self-awareness, surely even the DNA spiral matrix, even if that is what God is, someone put the DNA matrix and seeded it on Earth, that might be what God is. Who knows? But the fact is, it's dragged me back to understand the value of the text, the lessons, and be open to the fact that someone started this shit.
Well, it's like the old joke, scientists, they get all cocky, with their cloning and everything else. And so they call God, have a meeting, and they say, hey, God, we don't need you anymore. We know, just like you, we know how to create humans. We can create a man from mud. So we don't need you anymore. And God says, okay. He says, but you need to go get your own mud.
Yep.
It's like, because even the greatest, theoretical physicists, they've figured out the Big Bang all the way to like nanoseconds, within nanoseconds of its beginning, but they can't answer what sparked it, and B, what created the huge dense original mass to even explode. So
yeah. Like, okay. And when we think about that, the maths of that, because I read A Brief History of Time, Stephen Hawking's book, that was supposed to be meant for the layman, and boy, oh boy, tough read even for the layman, even though he's dumbed it down as much as he could. But even he said that he doesn't preclude the existence of God, but his belief structure is that if there is a God, he created it at that Big Bang singularity, and he created the rules of the universe with which it could play. And the universe has then gone on according to those rules. But even he says what you just said. So if Stephen Hawking and Wes Schaefer agree on it, I'm okay with that. I'm going to go with that. I'm with it.
Amen.
Yep. Yeah. So no, it's crazy times, man.
You're starting your day. I'm ending my day. Where do we send people? I've got a link here on the notes to your website, but then you've got your own podcast, right? And
come here. If people want to hang, and I'll tell you, today's sort of podcast has been a couple of hours, so Wes might even break this up into a couple episodes. I don't know what he's going to do, or edit it down. But what I would say is, there. Normally, if you go to my podcast, it's because it's just me and Wes catching up, right? We haven't spoken for years. We've been friends for nearly a decade. Love the guy. I have so much admiration for him, and I just wanted to catch up with my friend. So there's been some lessons interspersed in there. But when you go to Real Estate Renegades, my podcast, it's a lot more educational. Now, even though it's aimed at real estate agents, the lessons that I learned to teach my niche, if you want to call it that, are universal marketing principles. So when Wes mentioned before Seth Godin, Dan Kennedy, the great man Dan Kennedy, Frank Kern, Jay Abrahams, the principles that I took to the real estate industry were based on marketing legends in a generic and a general sense. I mean, Wes and I met through a great mentor in that space called Joel Bauer. He sort of taught us some influence persuasion skills when speaking from a stage. So I learned a lot about how to run seminars sitting next to my mate Wes Schaefer and learning not only from the person speaking, but from the people sitting next to me like Wes. When I've got a master of multimedia, multi-step, follow-up sequenced technologies sitting beside me, man, I'm going to connect with that guy and stay friends with him for a decade because he's going to add to me and I'm going to add to his world in who knows how. I just know I need to stay connected with this guy and I like him, right? So that's us. So, but if you go to the Real Estate Renegades podcast, it's more instructional than catching up with an old friend. It's more what to do, how to do it, with an example being given in the real estate space. But I'm telling you, these principles are timeless. These principles that have been, and even Dan Kennedy says he's never had, and he's one of my primary marketing mentors. Even he says, I've never had an original idea in my life. Even he gives credit to the people he learned from, even though I would say Dan Kennedy, if that is true, is one of the best aggregators. Wes used that word before. He's one of the best aggregators of universal marketing knowledge that I've ever seen in the history of the world. He's amazing. And so, I mean, people like Frank Kern, who I learned from as well, he gives Kennedy credit. He took Kennedy principles and just applied them in the new world. So if you did want to sort of get the real estate aggregation of those principles on the Real Estate Renegades podcast, I'll be honored to have you there. Listen to a few things, drop me a line, grab a copy of my book, Punching Above Your Weight, from Amazon, which is sort of the narrative of how I managed to apply it in my business, those timeless principles. And yeah, so come and hang, but I'm not hard to find if you need to connect with me. I'm sort of Glenn Twiddle everywhere, and you'll find me in the place that you want to find me most. If I haven't offended, if you made it this far, then you're on board with me and Wes's style. So.
Well, that's what's funny. I've had a lot of different people on this show, and but those who are not of our persuasion tend to be the most judgmental. I'm not going to listen to them. Like, okay, I mean, knock yourself out.
At least
I'm
get
out here, and I mean,
that's why we save the gold for the end, Wes. We save the gold for the end. Actually, before you run, man, are you still? Have you evolved? Because at the time when we met, you were you're master of Infusionsoft. Where have you gone in that space? Like, you still playing in that world? Because we're about to sign up with Go High Level, which I'm told is a really good one that kind of does a lot of those things. I'm told it's very complicated and complex, like Infusionsoft was. Where are you in that space when a decade ago you were kind of at the top of your game there? You still playing in that space?
I am. I may be updating this 700-page book.
the definitive guide to Infusionsoft, brother.
I haven't updated in a while, so it's not current. But so it's been a love-hate relationship with Infusionsoft, now known as Keep.
Okay.
Yeah, so they rebranded that whole. So their issue. I'll tell you we'll air all the dirty laundry. All right.
We've definitely made this a double podcast, Wes.
But I mean, when they started out around 2000, 2001, somewhere in there, they were just some family, right? Cousins, friends, brothers. They were just coders. They were developers doing custom coding, and they got a call from a guy. Reed Hosington. I met the guy. He's like, I've got pains. It was a Friday. They almost didn't answer the phone. I'm like, what do you mean you have pain? So this guy did real estate. Actually, had a real estate investing business. And he sent a blast to his whole list, offering like 30% off this like expensive program. So his existing customers called him up and said, hey, I want that price. So he had pain. He's like, I need to segment my list. So what we take for granted now was not so easy years ago. So when Infusionsoft was started, it was not started with this grand vision to create this marketing automation engine. So I tell you that because so when they started, they did not have the pieces in place to scale in a modular fashion. It was all custom coded. So I tell people it would be like you buy a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home, and as your family grows, you don't have the money.
Bedrooms.
Well, yeah, you don't have the money to move, and you don't have the money to hire a professional contractor. So you hire, you bring in somebody, bring in your mates, watch some YouTube, buy some books from the library because YouTube maybe wasn't a thing.
Build bedrooms.
So you build bedrooms. And you build bedrooms, and and it's like, well, what about like compacting the soil and drainage and slopes and
we don't worry about that. We just put up walls.
It's about to rain. Let's get the roof up. Okay, so and I always told people, I said, look, Infusionsoft back then, I said, they do nothing. None of their modules are best of class. CRM, affiliate, email builder, landing page builder, e-commerce, blah, blah, blah. None of them are best in class. But what they were best in class was for $299 a month. So this is back 2008 when I found them, right? And I found them through Dan Kennedy. It was $5,000 down. They got that from Dan Kennedy, and they changed that eventually. But $5,000 down, $299 a month. You get 5 licenses, so $60 a month for like damn near unlimited. It was like a huge account, couple 100,000 contacts, 500,000 emails or something like that. So for $299 a month, you had all these things in one place. Nobody could touch that. Okay. So others come up, MailChimp. Okay. Better email, lead pages. Okay. Better landing pages. Okay. ClickBank or Commission Junction, whatever. Okay. Better affiliate, but you're paying a lot of money for each of those and you still got to bolt them together. Okay. So nobody could touch them. And, but as technology evolved, they couldn't update the software. Right? Because eventually, you have this 27 bedroom mansion and now you want to make a 4th story. And you're like, no. I mean, no.
Yeah, I get that.
And not only.
It's like, think of any software. Yeah, like I even look at what Facebook looked like back in that vintage, the 2008, 9. Like, remember that poke button that was there? I thought the poke button existed. So if you look at even how something like Facebook has evolved, there is no way that a software in 2008 could still be identical 20 years later, 15 years later.
Yeah. And they evolved. I mean, even before then, 2011, the campaign builder came out. But overall, it was just, the campaign builder made things super easy. And so I sold a bunch of software. But tools started coming out. Entreport got better. Active Campaign came out of nowhere. And man, with like 12 people, you had 90% of Infusionsoft's functionality for like half the price. Okay. Now Go High Level is out there. And look, what I've learned is there is no perfect platform out there. Okay. I've got a free little quiz people can go through. I call it process before login. You need to document the processes you need, the processes you want, the processes you have to have. Okay. And everybody's a little bit different. Do you need landing pages? Do you need, tracking and attribution? Do you need affiliates? Do you need subscriptions and one-click upsells and blah, 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 blah? So you got to write all this out. Say, what's my core business? What do I need? Okay. Email broadcast, SMS. Do you need direct mail? You got to map all that out. And then just like when you go shopping for a home, there's no perfect home, right? There has to be a compromise, and the wife says, I need a big kitchen. The husband says, I need a big garage. The wife says, it's got to be close to schools. The husband says, it's got to be close to the airport or close to work. The wife says, it's got to, I need to have an HOA. The husband says, well, I need at least an acre. I don't want to see my neighbors, blah, 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 blah. Oh, and it has to be under 500K. Okay, that doesn't exist. So let's rank order these.
Got it.
How important is the kitchen? How important is it? Dad says, I have a smaller garage. The wife says, I can be a little farther from the school. And then so you've got to rank order these things and prioritize them because there's nothing perfect. And so, but then whenever you buy it, it's like when you go buy a computer. When you buy a computer, don't go look at computer websites again for 3 years because you'll be pissed off because they all newer chips, twice the speed, 10 times the resolution. You can see a gnat's ass from the moon with this, and you're like, oh, I just bought my computer. It's going to change, right? So buy it and go all in, right? Over all these years, man, all the conversations I've had with people about CRMs, I've probably had 10% of people actually switch. Okay. Now, if they come to me with nothing, Excel spreadsheets, okay, I'm going to help you find one. But if you're using Entreport, hey, one thing I want to switch to Infusionsoft, I'm like, why? Show me. You don't want to switch from Entreport. You're not using it, right? I want to keep sucks. Show me what's going on. Oh, what about that button? I've never seen that. Oh, it's only been there for 20 years. Okay, oh, I can do that? Yes, you can do that. Whoa. Okay, I'll keep it. The grass is not greener, but if you come to me with something specific, right? And, I've studied this, I need this technology, I need this integration. It's got to work with this third-party app, which is crucial to my business. And usually that's something like healthcare, something unique. It's like, okay, you need HIPAA compliance or Sarbanes-Oxley, some bullshit financial thing. Okay, we can switch. But usually I'm like, it's user error. Everybody, it's always the other guy, right? Not my fault. It's, it's my wife, it's my partner, it's this stupid software. No, it's your fault.
Yeah. Because I guess the thing that I've sort of, I've dabbled in, and there's my problem. It is my fault that I've dabbled in Kartra when Frank Kern recommended it. Never went all in enough to learn it. My staff went enough in to barely be able to put up a quick website, a quick landing page, and we got functional with Kartra, but never all in. And then when we started thinking about taking my full email database over to it, it became cost prohibitive. It was crazy with a big list, crazy. Yeah. So for my entire career, I've had a eye contact list. That's been my primary email list. And then my SMSs were done through a separate platform. My emails was eye contact. And so I was still almost Excel spreadsheets because I'd have an SMS database here and I didn't get them to talk to each other and I didn't go all in. Much to my detriment. I'm not saying that's what you should do as a watcher of Wes's podcast. I'm saying you should be watching Wes's other training and get that goddamn Bible of how to master Keep, formerly known as Infusion. Because I've come to that thing. I'm saying now that COVID drove a truck through the seminar business and we became less of an education company, now 2/3 of our company, Wes, is we're almost like an advertising agency. We started during COVID doing it for them, what we used to teach them to do and hope they'd implement. I now have a staff of like 36 people. We have 30 telemarketers on staff. Local Australians coming from live. They're not overseas call centers. They're making cold calls for our agents. We've got 8 people or so in our Facebook department generating leads and implementing the social media strategies that we used to teach agents and hope they would implement. So now that we don't do as many live events, I've come to the conclusion I need now to use the extra time that I've got, other than hanging for a couple of hours with my mate Wes. I now need to know I need to go all in on using one of those things, like picking one, going all in and learning it. And when I had a quick overview of that Go High level, it seemed to have a lot of functionality that A, meet my core requirements, and B, they've even got some extra that I think would be pretty cool that I wouldn't have prioritized up there, but I think, ooh, that might be fun, But yeah, so the time's come for me to now follow your advice and go all in on one of them. It's not going to be Kartra. I'm going to move from Kartra because of its limited functionality. And it just seems like, I don't know, you are the expert that I would go to for advice. If there was a blank slate out of all of them, knowing that, okay, don't move from Entreport to Keep just because you don't know Entreport. If you were sort of sitting there with a blank slate and you had the choice of all of them, what's been the reporting on Go High level? Because we were that close to really starting their academy, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I've heard mixed reviews. What is ideal for you and agencies like you, if you're doing things for others, it's a great platform. So they're white labeling, right? And you can you can build an entire business in a box and push it to someone and boom, it's up and running quickly. So a lot of benefits in that regard. They're kind of like what Keep was, Infusionsoft was years ago. I don't think any of their stuff is like best of class, but for agencies, it's it could be really good. I would, if they have a free trial, or if you can do like a month or two,
They do. And look, it's affordable anyway, but the
Yeah.
problem is the cost isn't the thing. It ain't the, $300 a month for the sort of the level I think I'll be at, maybe $1,000 a month if I fully maximize it or whatever. That is negligible compared to the weeks, months of the learning curve to master the software. That's the real price to pay. So, if it was money alone, take my goddamn money. It's the learning curve.
Yeah, but I'm saying make sure, have that process before you log in. What do you need to have happen, right? Before anybody gets into their software, y'all need to whiteboard this thing out and say, okay, but before you go looking at homes, hey, Glenn, we want to look at homes. Holy shit. Do you have a list of you want to look at all homes?
Yeah, all homes. Yeah.
So
give me some parameters, bro.
Yeah. So I would sit down with your core team, and whiteboard this thing out.
Yep.
And then go shopping, right? Keep is making some good changes. They're coming out with more kind of a business in a box. Push it to a client, push it to a niche, so, and they've got to make these changes. It's funny you mentioned like Frank Kern, and because I always use the analogy, because people will see, like they'll get an email from Oprah, right? Tony Robbins, and they're using Salesforce.com or MoraPost or ConvertKit. So I'm going to go get what they get. Do not do that. It's like I see the Arnold Schwarzenegger, eats caviar. So that's the key to getting big.
The magic is caviar.
Yeah,
that's right.
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
It's like,
Tony, it's funny that Tony went to Kern. I don't know. Did you ever get that box set, The Money Masters, where Kern and a bunch of the guys, Russell Brunson, I think was one of them. And I remember when Frank was, because I spent a couple of days with Frank in Vegas, just me, Billy Jean, his marketing. There was just 10 of us sitting around a boardroom for 2 days in Vegas. It was an amazing experience. And Roland Frazier, there was just high level guys. And I was at the time in one of Frank's circles, and I said, man, he took a liking to me, probably likable Aussie bloke. I'm a bit, out there and stuff. And he liked what I had to offer and he invited me. Amazing. And he was telling us that story about how Tony was clueless with all of that stuff. And when it was one of Kern's mates, the mindset guy, I can't remember. I've got his book over there. But anyway, they really helped Tony go into this new online platform, this digital space, landing pages, email addresses, and all of that. And Tony was clueless. He was just doing his firewalk and doing his psychology type stuff. And they brought him into the new world. So we can owe Kern a debt of gratitude, man, that he took the principles of Dan Kennedy and took to Tony.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I met Frank once at an event, back in the room. We were talking before he was going on to speak, and it was short, 5 minutes, 7 minutes. But we chatted, and he was totally down to earth. And
he's the most down to earth bloke.
He's a smart marketer.
He's great. Yeah, he is. He's the best. And see how he's sort of segued from the surfer dude, because that was the aspirations of his marketplace that he wanted to influence, internet marketers who could surf for a living and be a hippie and be a millionaire, to now, he's mutated into the statesman that he is now. So no, he's one of the best. He's the modern day embodiment, I think, of the principles of Kennedy, most appropriately applied, I think. He's great. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, so take some time with that, right? Give me a call if you want. I can help y'all just brainstorm it. You just compare it to real estate.
It's going to be a complex. Right? What I'm going to do is, because to your point, because I know that's good advice, and I've done it with one or two of my processes, but the challenge is the complexity of my business is ridiculous. So it's kind of like, I think I need to get a couple of these foundational, like event filling up a seminar, right? Let's say I need to get that process mapped out and get the software backend appropriate for that process. Sort of that might be one. and the agency might be one. Okay, what do I do with them once I've influenced them to become a client of ours? Because if I tried to map out everything, when you go with book funnels, like I've still got, in order to get, because I self-published this, of course, because I wasn't going to wait along for some book publisher to come along, tap me on the shoulder and say, I now announce you a published author. Well, I wasn't waiting for that. So wrote it myself, published it myself. The ISBNs on the back cover are officially, in every way, I am a book publisher. I've now published 100 books for my students that are up on Amazon, So, like things like a book funnel. I can't really wait until every single one of 20 processes that all could be standalone businesses. Like teach people how to be an author. Teach people how to become a local celebrity, famous person, no matter what the niche. Niche real estate, niche general public. One of my YouTube channels that I just haven't even touched is called Be Phenomenal. It's got 30,000 odd subscribers. And I haven't even looked at it. I just chucked up some content on it, and it's more successful than my main one. Totally neglected. And just because of time. So it's kind of like I just need to pick those foundational things that are 80% of my business and get a piece of software that'll do those well, and then hope those other things might be able to bolt on and sort of square peg round hole kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and it's rare I recommend somebody have multiple tools, but if you can't reduce the complexity, then embrace it, because you can always use tools like Zapier or something to push. Because for 9 years, I was a HubSpot partner and an Infusionsoft partner, right? And so I kept both going, and I just had a zap. If a lead came through an old Infusionsoft funnel, then I would just duplicate that contact inside of my HubSpot and vice versa. So I always had both accounts set up. Because last year I left HubSpot after 9 years and going back totally into Infusionsoft for keep. So I didn't have to. It wasn't such a big switch for me because I, kind of like having a house in storage. I just go in, dust it off, freshen up everything, and I was good to go. So
I suppose that's the thing. I've got all my various tools that are foundational. That even when I dabbled with Kartra, I got an account with Entreport, never really went anywhere with it, but I did dabble more with Kartra. But I kept my pieces. I kept my SMS list and my SMS standalone functionality. I kept my email functionality. Like I kept the bits that had the various segments and data. So no matter what happens with any of these more integrative platforms, that I can always rely on the individual component pieces that are consistent for the last decade plus. Yeah. I reckon it's going to be another learning curve, and I've been on a learning curve for 20 years. So, it's just now COVID sort of was the unique opportunity because, you can imagine, I don't know how much you heard about what went on here in Australia, but we had state to state border complete, impassable borders. And I did an interview with Dr. Peter McCulloch. It was funny, man. I did an interview with Peter McCulloch, right? That night, he was on, that morning, your night, he was on Rogan. And then later that day, he went from the biggest podcast in the world to the worst podcast in the world with me, right? And he was amazed. How the hell do they monitor state borders? Your country's as big as ours, isn't it? And it is, but our population means that many of our states, there's only 1 or 2 points of border crossing in that there's only sort of 1 or 2 roads, like WA, where I am now, Western Australia. There's really only 1 road in, 1 road out. So if those police man that border crossing, they really kept out most of, so it was crazy times. So you can imagine, if I can't cross a border, I got stranded out of my home state for 3 months, stranded in another state. And so you can imagine live events were dead for 2 years. Couldn't do a live event. Hard to be an in-office consultant or mentor if I can't get to your office. Hard to charge 50 grand a year if all of my knowledge is going to be delivered to you via Zoom. So it forced me to sort of pivot and tweak and sort of go to another level. And that's where the we do it for you business came from, out of necessity, you know. So it's an interesting one. But yeah, so it's and look, my clients love it because now they get my marketing brain as needed, but I'm actually doing half of the work for them, or, you know, a lot of the work for them. And so, yeah, I'm getting great feedback from the clients, man.
Well, yeah, and that's good. And, you know, and you do have to pivot sometimes, right? I mean, that word I think is overused, but you know, look at IBM, right? In the 80s and 90s, right? You buy a computer. Is it IBM compatible? And now IBM doesn't make personal computers, right? They sold it to Lenovo, right? So made in China. So IBM does not make computers anymore.
Wow.
Okay. So maybe you got to change, right? People like they'll hold on to whatever, like to their, you know, pry it from my cold dead hands. It's like, it doesn't have to be that way, man.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. I had three, because I agree with you about the word pivot. It's horrible. But well, just horrible because it's overused. But I like to think there's been three epochs, three major reinventions, maybe might be the word, that I went from a cold calling machine, because that was the way I was taught to get a prospect, cold call. And so we would make our KPIs were 80 connected calls a day, and I couldn't do it, right? I couldn't do it. I hated it. But that was the first thing, cold call and a presentation that worked. Right. So we nailed that and we were number one in our area based on that. But then the next reinvention, based on my sookie la-la-ness, because I was a big sook and couldn't handle getting told to F off 29 times out of 30, because I couldn't do the 80. I'd pull up stumps at about 30 and then start to procrastinate and find a reason why I had something else more important to do that day. So I'd make about 30 connects a day, where 29 of them would get lost and one was maybe a begrudging maybe. So my first reinvention was, how do I get the one person out of 30 that was going to say maybe to me to call me so I don't have to be insulted and hurt by the 29? So my first major reinvention was a cold caller to an attraction marketer, where I wanted them to come to us, where we were using direct mail and paper and ink and broadcast advertising, radio, TV, newspaper, magazines, attraction style marketing and personal brand marketing within those media to get celebrity so that people would come to me. Then the next major reinvention was going from that being primarily radio, TV, newspaper, maybe some emails, SMSs and things, to a primarily digital media. So primarily paper and ink and offline to primarily, now there's still value in paper and ink and offline. You know, there's one of the little offline documents we've got from Naomi that's going out soon. You know, Naomi still dabbles in real estate, you know, even though she's my business partner, she still dabbles in real estate. That's just right here. Paper and ink still valid, but still a lot of our stuff went digital. So that was the next major reinvention, figuring out Facebook algorithms, social media, which of the social media platforms, the Twitters, the X's, the YouTubes, the Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, you know, even TikTok, etc., are appropriate to which niches. You know, where does a real estate client who owns property primarily hang out and do business? Where does a younger person, because I've had other people ask me in other industries, which platforms, and there is no one size fits all answer for all products that you're going to sell. So that was the next major reinvention, was from offline to online, if you wanted to call that. And then really the next major reinvention is what we're in the middle of now, which is what's AI going to do to that? So there is another reinvention that's imminent that's going to be thrust upon us all. But yeah, 2 or 3 major reinventions in a lifetime. I think that's probably about par for the course. Every 6 to 10 years, something big changes necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, you can be McDonald's, right? Or you can be Chick-fil-A. But McDonald's, you know, they became famous because they stuck to one thing at first, and you know, then they evolved. You know, they didn't start out doing breakfast and yogurt and fish sandwiches. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, they added fish because during Lent they were losing all the Catholics.
Oh yeah. And I heard the story. They added breakfast because they had this unused time. It was an asset that they were paying for that they weren't monetizing, and it became the most profitable part of their menu, they reckon.
Yeah. But then, Chick-fil-A says, look, we're going to do chicken. That's it. And we're closed on Sundays. Okay. I'm sure they could make a burger. They could offer, salad or whatever. I mean, but they're like, we're going to keep it simple. We have In-N-Out out here. They're like,
I was going to say, is In-N-Out burger still like 4 items on the menu or something?
Yeah. And they have a secret menu, right? You can order like a 4x4, an animal style. But I mean, they keep it simple. And but those, I don't know, those probably aren't the norm. People look like we have our, the Dow Jones Industrial Index. Well, that thing has changed hundreds of times in 100 years. There are many, many former companies that were listed, and there's only 30 on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Companies have gone bankrupt that used to be a bellwether stock. Okay, they're gone.
Well, what was that book? It was Tom Peters. It might be Good to Great. It was one of those books, and I think it was good. It was one where literally this sales coach, kind of doing what you and I do, right? He took all his clients, and supposedly that book was a sales letter as promoting a consultant. But they reckon that in the 5 years after Good to Great was written, using these exemplary examples of success, they were all out of business. So boy, oh boy, those things dated quick. That's my principles that I learned from a Kennedy, rather than just copying what another seminar promoter or another author or another whatever it is that we do. I'm not just copying VaynerMedia in my you might call it a social media advertising agency, which is really the evolution that I've gone in since COVID. We do it for you. So really, instead of just copying Gary Vee and VaynerMedia, what Gary Vee is doing, what other advertising agencies are doing, I copy the principles gathered from a variety of marketing sources, including Gary Vee, but including Dan Kennedy, including Caples from in the day, including the Robert Collier letter book in copywriting, and all of those historic and current incarnations of the right principles. And then based on those principles, I do what Glenn Twiddle would do. And that way I can copy from the greats historically, but still almost be unrecognizable. I was a finalist nationally in Australia here for Thought Leader of the Year, because all of these things that I brought to my industry were so innovative and so never been done before. And so, because that's what Thought Leader says to me, innovation and creativity and all of that. I just copied off other people in other industries based on those principles. But because I kind of took them from so many disparate sources, again, Wes Schaefer being one of them, but all of my mentors and friends and, and coaches and all of that, that when I brought all of those collaboration of stolen ideas and tactics and principles, I get Thought Leader of the Year because I'm so gosh darn innovative. So it's the illusion of innovation when I didn't have an original idea at all. I just executed on what someone else taught me to do.
And what's old is new, right?
Yeah.
So, and going back to Dan Kennedy, right? Some people say, oh, keep it simple, stupid. Dan Kennedy says, embrace complexity. You want a business that's
complexity
so hard
is your bulletproof advantage. I remember Kennedy saying complexity, a complex matrix of your systems will be your bulletproof advantage against competitions knocking you off.
Yes.
Beautiful principle.
So, but you got to balance that, right? Like which works for you, which works for you right now. And so for you as being an established business person, entrepreneur, maybe you need 3 systems, right? Because maybe one is good, lead pages with an SMS, an email drip. Okay, boom. Use if they take certain action, then Zapier can push them into Keep. Keep does something you need. Boom. You're speaking, it goes to another. I mean, right? And you've got the staff to kind of do that. It is not ideal. I don't think I've ever recommended it to anybody, but for you,
I know. And here's the thing, that did happen with, we played a little bit with Entreport and Kartra, and I bought a program off Billy Jean. Actually, Billy Jean is marketing. Good guy, bought his program, made money out of it. It was magnificent. But what he sold, you could just almost click and point and import it into ClickFunnels. Right? It was so easy if I did it in ClickFunnels. but I didn't have ClickFunnels. I had Entreport, and I didn't want to go and learn ClickFunnels or whatever. So it was a pain. And I eventually did it, and I got it into Entreport, did it, made 30 grand off of like a $50 product or whatever I bought from Billy Jean. It was such a good deal. Billy, because I know Billy because I sat next to him for a couple of days, but I didn't buy it from him in the capacity as guy that I could text and he would have sent it to me. I just bought off his lawn. It was so cheap, it wasn't worth me phoning him. But then when I implemented it, made 30 grand off that thing. I just wish it was as easy as if I was a ClickFunnels customer, because I had to repurpose it. Whereas if you bought it from him and you could just click import, it just appeared in the ClickFunnels and you could just change the text, put up a video, and boom. So, I guess what did bite me on the butt was because I had to engage an Entreport expert to help me with that. I couldn't do it. And so even though I've got staff to do it, or even external consultant type staff, the advice I'd give to people, which is the advice I have to follow myself, is I at least need to have a very sound, maybe not mastery, but a very sound understanding of the functionality before I outsource it to an expert. Otherwise, I'm always at the mercy of that expert being there or not being there. My success is reliant upon that expert being in my world or that staff member staying employed with me. And so I really do need to get a foundational understanding of the stuff before I go and let staff or external consultants do everything.
Yes, but right. And I've always told people, certainly with smaller businesses using just one system like Keep, I did tell them, you have to be conversant in the software or you will become a prisoner, like you're saying. Okay. But in your business, eventually, you're going to grow to your level. You're eventually going to outgrow the ability to know all these systems so intimately and intricately. Right.
Okay.
Now, all of them, these are all essentially the same. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like you have a PC and a Mac. All right. There's different buttons. It could be frustrating. You can't quite find, this one doesn't quite do what the Mac does and vice versa. That's a pain in the butt. But I mean, the reality is, you hire an overseas VA, even an agency overseas, so they get some backup. You got a couple people that can run the thing. Once it's up and running, you're just maintaining it.
Yeah. Okay. So you can maybe learn the maintenance as opposed to learning the tech setup side.
Yeah. Dude, I'm even getting tired of tinkering with this stuff, right? I haven't done setup for people in forever. I've got, if I sell an account, I'll be there for the initial call, introduce the team, say, look, you're in good hands. Because the reality is I'm getting old, man. I'm like, get off my lawn. I don't have the patience. Here's somebody.
Where's the old man?
Like, this button. I'm like, you got sticky notes. You got notes written on the back of your wallet, on receipts stuffed in your wallet. You got shit on the whiteboard that's 6 months old. You got Excel spreadsheets you haven't updated. You're complaining? I just like, whoa. Like, shut your mouth. I don't have. So,
Wes is becoming like Strickland in Back to the Future 2. The principal who's always calling him a slacker. In the dystopian future, he's on the lawn with his shotgun going, get off my lawn, slacker.
Yeah, I've really never had the patience, right? These whiners are complaining. Like, I had to learn this stuff, back when it was $5,000 and didn't have the campaign builder, didn't have the drag and drop features, didn't have 24/7 chat support, didn't have Facebook groups, taught it, learned it myself, sold it, wrote a freaking book on it. It's like, if I can figure this shit out, you can. And it's just so much easier now compared to back in the day. You had to walk to school uphill in the snow both ways, but there's some truth to that, so I do play around with it and, try to stay current on it, but that has been my life, right? It's not your life. It's not your world.
True.
Doing that, 100%. But you have pivoted, right? So you're doing more done for you. So whatever you are selling, whatever you are recommending to these people that you're pushing a button and pushing it to them, yeah, you need to be be pretty conversant on it, right? Now, you don't want to be their tech support,
Correct.
right? But you need to be able to, off the cuff, answer a question, maybe make a video, make a post, because you're going to be the face. You're believable, right? So understanding that, some of the broad features, but you don't have to be a wizard at it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
cool, man. Well, hopefully you're advising me and kind of even, this has just been us chatting for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
But I reckon there's enough lessons in there to make this a valuable sit for those of us who've stuck with us for a couple of hours.
Hey, they can always hit a double speed, and get through
it. Yep.
That's how I listen to most podcasts anyway. So there we go.
And try listening to Gary Vee at double speed. You're going to hurt your brain with that because he talks so fast.
Dude, yeah, there are some people you can't, like Jordan Peterson. I can only do half speed, even though he kind of talks a little slowly. But his accent,
the concepts, you have to pause. But no, the accent, just the concepts are so big, man.
The concepts are so deep. Like I rewind. Like what?
Yeah.
What?
Man, he's great. He came to Australia late last year, and we went and saw him, and we got to even meeting him for like a minute and a half. We had a chat with him, Naomi and I, minute and a half, and I talked about the difference that he made in me in religion. That's what we talked about. About how I listened to those at the time only Genesis. He hadn't yet released Exodus, and which he's just released in the last year. But yeah, that's what we talked about. I'll tell you. And he's so, when you're with him, he is so personable. Like he makes you think like he is, like it's his training as a psychiatrist, as a psychologist. Like literally that minute and a half where he's meeting 100 people or whatever he's meeting, he's just spoken to thousands, and we're one city of an entire whatever the hell, and yet he made us feel like he was genuinely talking to us and appreciative of us. Mate, he's 1 in 6 billion. That guy, he's 1 in 6 billion.
Yeah, I mean he sees you, huh?
Yeah, no, he's the man. He's a man. Oh man, well, hopefully there's enough in there for you to drag something out of, bro. To any of Wes's fans, you're in the right hands. The guy is the real deal. Over a decade, or about a decade that I've known him, he's as good as they get, and he's my go-to guy in his area of expertise. So he should be yours, and I'm glad he is.
All right. Well, the lesser half of Naomi and Glenn.
She's probably walked by here a couple of times, I bet. That might be a drinking game. Whenever anything goes on in the background, take a shot.
Cool, man. It was good catching up. I will, I will hit end on this. I will link out. I'll do in the post-production as well. I'll be mentioning all your links. It was great catching up. Have a great, great day, right? Man. Have a great Wednesday.
Yeah. How long did we go for? 2.5 hours. God damn, that's crazy.
I didn't record the whole 2.5. We were flapping our gums for a bit before.
Fair enough.
All right, here we go.
Good chat, my man.
Stop transcription. Stop record. Have a good one, buddy.
All right, buddy.
Like I said, I left it all in. You could hear the ramble, the banter. And I never hit record to start, right? I like to talk to people. Although sometimes, I should. I used a testimonial from Jeffrey Gittimer. Thank goodness he was recording. He's a longtime sales training idol of mine, so I got a good testimonial from him because he recorded from the beginning. But anyway, I hope you like that. I hope you got some pointers out of that. I was inspired by his story. I've known him, like I said, about 8 years, and I didn't know the whole thing, how he really went all in, mortgaging his home to get Arnold. But I do this podcast because I'm genuinely interested in these stories, and I ask the questions that I truly have. And so now for 10 and a half years, over 600 episodes, I've done with guests. I've done some solo episodes, so pretty easily over 600 of, spending 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours with cool people, with experts. And I have asked the questions that I have, and, I'm putting on events. So I sincerely had these questions. So it was good that all that came up. Check out his book. He's a good guy. He's not going to spam the crap out of you. So if you like what he was offering, go get you some of that. I'm linking to it in the show notes. But just look up Glenn Twiddle, Real Estate Renegade, and you will find him. All right? I got to head to Austin. Thanks for listening. I'll go tell something.